Navy SEAL unjustly convicted begs for a final goodbye with his daughter, but the outcome is heartbreaking. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The courtroom was silent except for the sharp tapping of the judge's gavel, echoing like a death knell. Ethan Cole sat rigid in his chair, his once proud shoulders hunched under the weight of disgrace. The uniform he had worn with honor as a Navy SEAL, crisp, decorated with medals that told stories of valor and sacrifice, was gone. In its place, he wore a plain gray suit as if the world had stripped him of more than just fabric. It had stripped him of dignity. His fingers trembled as he gripped the edge of the defendant's table, knuckles white. The air smelled of wood polish and sweat. He could hear the quiet shuffling of papers behind him, the murmured judgment of the spectators seated on the benches. They whispered about the man who had gone from hero to traitor in the span of weeks. He glanced to his right. His defense attorney, an overworked public defender with bags under his eyes and a permanent frown, was whispering something about strategy. But Ethan wasn't listening. His gaze drifted toward the gallery, scanning faces until he found the only two that mattered. At the end of the row, Emily sat nestled against her mother, her small hands clutching the fabric of a floral dress that was too formal for her age. She was only 8, with blonde hair tied into pigtails and eyes that sparkled like her father's, though today they were clouded with confusion and fear. She didn't understand why her daddy wasn't sitting with them, why her mom had whispered bitterly that he wouldn't be coming home again. "Daddy's in trouble," her mother had said, bitterness seeping into her tone. "He did something bad, Emily." But Ethan hadn't. The prosecution's final statement snapped him back to reality. A stern-faced prosecutor stood confidently, delivering the final blow as if it were a rehearsed performance. Ethan Cole knowingly and willingly violated protocol during a mission in Kabul, resulting in the deaths of innocent civilians. He then falsified reports to cover up his crimes. It wasn't true. Ethan's mind screamed against the lies. Those civilians hadn't died because of him. They had been caught in the crossfire of a covert mission that had gone south due to bad intelligence. Intelligence handed to him by someone higher up the chain. But the evidence had been doctored, and no one wanted to listen. He was the scapegoat, the convenient fall guy to protect those in power. The judge's voice boomed, commanding everyone to rise. Ethan stood slowly, legs stiff as the verdict was read. "Guilty of all charges." The words landed like punches to the gut, each one knocking the air out of his lungs. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to remain upright. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. The sentence was swift. Life imprisonment without parole, with the possibility of death if the military tribunal deemed it necessary. He felt the cold metal of handcuffs clamp around his wrists. As the guards led him away, he craned his neck for one last look at Emily. She was crying, her small frame shaking as her mother tried to shield her from the scene. But Emily's eyes met his, and in that fleeting moment, Ethan made a silent vow. "I will come back for you." The ride to the military prison was suffocating. The hum of the armored transport vehicle vibrated beneath him, but his mind was a storm of memories. He thought of the mission, the ambush, the chaos of gunfire and smoke. He had been given orders to secure the area, only to find civilians trapped in the crossfire. He had tried to save them. He had tried so damn hard. But by the time he got there, they were gone. Someone had set him up, and he knew exactly who it was. Carter Blake, his commanding officer during the mission. Blake had always been ruthless, cutting corners to secure promotions and high-level contracts. But why frame Ethan? Was it to protect himself, or was there something larger at play? The vehicle came to a stop and the doors were yanked open. Harsh sunlight flooded in, blinding him for a moment. He was dragged out by 2 guards, their grips firm as they marched him toward the gates of the maximum security prison. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of sweat and despair. Metal gates clanged shut behind him as he was processed, fingerprinted, photographed, stripped of his personal belongings. They handed him a prison uniform, an ill-fitting, faded jumpsuit that further cemented his fall from grace. He was led down a dimly lit corridor lined with cells on either side. Inmates leaned against the bars, eyes narrowing as they sized him up. Some jeered, others whistled. He ignored them, keeping his gaze forward until he reached his cell. The door slammed shut behind him. He stood in the middle of the small space, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. He had gone from being one of the most respected operatives in the Navy to a prisoner in a matter of weeks. The weight of it all pressed down on him, and for the first time his knees buckled. He sank onto the cot, burying his face in his hands. Images of Emily flashed through his mind, her laughter, her hugs, the way she'd run to him whenever he came home from deployment. She had always believed he was invincible. Now she probably thought he was a monster. A knock on the bars interrupted his spiral of despair. He looked up to see a man with sharp features and a calculating gaze standing outside the cell. "You don't belong here," the man said, his voice low. "I know you didn't do what they said." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "Someone who knows you've been set up." He slid a folded piece of paper through the bars. "Read this, and if you're smart, we'll talk." Ethan hesitated before picking up the note. He unfolded it, scanning the message written in hurried block letters. The words made his pulse quicken. "Blake isn't your only enemy. There's more. If you want the truth, trust no one." Before he could ask any more questions, the man was gone, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Ethan clutched the note tightly, his mind racing. Someone inside the prison knew about the conspiracy. Someone wanted to help him. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this nightmare. But first, he had to survive long enough to find it. The clang of the steel door behind Ethan echoed like a gunshot, reverberating through the cold, narrow cell. He sat on the cot, staring at the small slip of paper in his hands, as if the ink itself carried the weight of salvation. Or maybe destruction. His fingers traced the rough texture of the note. The words were still seared into his mind. "Blake isn't your only enemy, there's more. If you want the truth, trust no one. Trust no one." The irony wasn't lost on him. Trust was the very foundation of his life as a Navy SEAL. Trust in your team, trust in your mission. But now trust was poison, a blade pressed against his throat. And even a whisper could be enough to slit it. The dim light from the overhead bulb flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts against the chipped cement walls. He folded the note, tucking it into the waistband of his jumpsuit. His breathing was shallow, his thoughts spiraling between desperation and fury. He had to figure out who had left that message, and why. A loud metallic bang jolted him from his thoughts. A guard strode down the corridor, slapping his baton against the cell bars as he passed. "Dinner," the guard barked. "Mess hall. Move it, inmate 57834. Ethan rose slowly, stretching his stiff legs. The muscles in his calves burned from hours of sitting in the same position. He followed the line of prisoners shuffling through the hallway, the air thick with the smell of stale bread, overcooked beans, and body odor. The mess hall was a cavernous space with long tables, plastic trays, and the unmistakable hum of hostility lurking beneath casual conversation. As he collected his tray, a voice muttered behind him, "Look who we've got here, the war hero." Ethan didn't have to turn around to recognize the voice. Brock Carter, a former Marine dishonorably discharged for smuggling weapons during a tour in Afghanistan. He had a reputation for breaking people's bones, usually with a smile on his face. Ethan grabbed his tray and kept moving. He wasn't here to make enemies or friends. His priority was survival. But Brock wasn't the type to be ignored. The ex-Marine stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Brock's broad frame towered over Ethan, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories of violence and regret. "Not gonna say hello, Cole?" Brock sneered. His breath reeked of onions and bad decisions. "I've been waiting to meet the guy who got innocent people killed and blamed it on the mission." Ethan's jaw tightened. His mind flashed back to Kabul, to the chaos of that night. The screams, the smoke, the weight of a dying man in his arms. The accusation stung like a fresh wound being reopened. but he wouldn't give Brock the satisfaction of seeing him react. "Get out of my way," Ethan said calmly, his eyes locked on Brock's. Brock chuckled, a low, menacing sound that sent ripples of unease through the nearby prisoners. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. But guts don't mean much in here." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I know people on the outside. I heard about your trial, and I know Blake isn't done with you. You think this is bad? You haven't seen anything yet." Ethan's fists clenched instinctively. His pulse thundered in his ears. But he forced himself to breathe, to think. Brock was baiting him, trying to provoke a fight. If Ethan retaliated, he'd be thrown into solitary confinement, or worse. With a slow exhale, Ethan sidestepped Brock and continued to his seat. The room felt like a pressure cooker, eyes following him as he sat down at the end of a table. The other prisoners shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. No one wanted to be associated with the disgraced SEAL. He picked at his food without tasting it, his appetite crushed under the weight of Brock's words. Blake wasn't done with him. What did that mean? Was Blake orchestrating something from the outside? Pulling strings to ensure Ethan never saw freedom again? The thought sent a chill down his spine. That night, back in his cell, the silence was deafening. He lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the mission in Kabul, searching for clues he might have missed. The ambush, the faulty intelligence, the civilians caught in the crossfire. It all felt like a trap he hadn't seen coming until it was too late. And now Blake had made sure the world believed Ethan was the one to blame. A distant noise broke his concentration, footsteps, faint but deliberate. Someone was approaching. He sat up, his muscles tense, ready to react if necessary. A shadow appeared outside his cell, followed by the familiar sound of paper being slipped through the bars. Ethan's heart pounded as he scrambled to grab it. The note was written in the same hurried block letters. "Watch your back. Someone inside is working for Blake." Ethan crumpled the note in his fist, his mind racing. Someone in the prison was feeding information to the man who had ruined his life. But who? And how far were they willing to go to silence him? The sound of keys jangling down the corridor snapped him back to reality. He quickly stuffed the note under his mattress just as the guard appeared, shining a flashlight into his cell. "Everything okay in here, Cole?" the guard asked, his tone dripping with mockery. Ethan nodded, masking his nerves. "Just trying to sleep." The guard lingered for a moment before moving on, his footsteps fading into the distance. Ethan leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. Whoever was leaving these notes knew things that could help him piece together the truth. But how much could he trust them? And if someone inside the prison was working for Blake, was he being set up for another fall? The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating him with questions and paranoia. But one thing was clear. If he wanted to survive, he needed to find the person leaving the notes, and fast. He lay back down, but sleep never came. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, planning his next move. Because if Blake wasn't done with him, then Ethan wasn't done fighting. The morning light barely penetrated the small, barred window of Ethan's cell, casting weak shadows across the cold cement floor. His eyes burned from the sleepless night, but his mind was sharper than ever. Whoever had slipped him the notes wasn't just warning him. They were giving him breadcrumbs to follow. And if someone inside the prison was working for Blake, Ethan couldn't afford to make a single misstep. As the guard passed by to unlock the cells for morning duties, Ethan tucked the second note deep inside his jumpsuit. He needed answers, and he had an idea where to start. The rec yard was a sprawling expanse of cracked asphalt, surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire. Prisoners clustered in small groups, some playing cards on overturned buckets, others lifting weights or pacing like caged animals. The air was thick with tension, as if one wrong move could ignite chaos. Ethan scanned the yard, searching for a familiar face. His eyes settled on Marcus Fletcher, a wiry man with a quick mind and a reputation for knowing things others didn't. Marcus had been an intelligence analyst before landing here on charges of insubordination. He wasn't a friend, But he wasn't an enemy either. And right now, Ethan needed allies wherever he could find them. He approached Marcus, who was sitting on a bench, meticulously shuffling a deck of cards as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "Cole," Marcus said without looking up, the corners of his mouth twitching into a smirk. "Didn't think you'd come looking for me." Ethan sat down beside him, keeping his tone casual. "You always seem to know what's going on around here." Marcus chuckled, finally meeting Ethan's gaze. "Information is currency in this place. And lucky for you, I'm rich." He set the deck of cards aside. "What do you need?" "I need to know who's working for Blake," Ethan said, keeping his voice low. Marcus's smirk faded. He leaned back against the bench, folding his arms across his chest. "Blake. Now there's a name I haven't heard in a while." His eyes darted around the yard, ensuring no one was listening. "You're playing a dangerous game, Cole. Blake's got long arms and they reach farther than you think." "I'm already on the losing side," Ethan replied. "I've got nothing to lose." Marcus studied him for a moment, as if weighing the risks of getting involved. Finally, he nodded. "There's a guy in here named Javier Cruz, former Special Forces. He's got connections to Blake's people on the outside. If anyone's feeding Blake information, it's him. Where can I find him?" Marcus gestured subtly toward a group of prisoners gathered near the weight benches. Javier was easy to spot, tall, muscular, with a tattoo of a scorpion crawling up his neck. He was laughing with a few others, but there was a coldness in his eyes that set him apart. "Careful, Cole," Marcus warned. "Javier doesn't like being questioned, and if he thinks you're onto him, you'll be dead before you can blink." Ethan nodded, the weight of the warning settling in his chest. But he couldn't afford to back down now. Later that day, Ethan found his moment. Javier was alone in the laundry room, sorting through a pile of clothes as the industrial washing machines hummed in the background. The smell of detergent mixed with the metallic tang of the vents, making the air feel heavy. Ethan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch made Javier glance over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing when he saw who it was. "Well, well," Javier said, setting down a folded shirt. "If it isn't the fallen hero, what do you want, Cole?" Ethan kept his posture relaxed, but his muscles were coiled, ready to react if necessary. "Just a conversation," Javier laughed, the sound harsh and hollow. "I don't do conversations." "This one's different," Ethan replied, stepping closer. "I know you're working for Blake." The room fell silent, the hum of the machines fading into the background as tension thickened between them. Javier's smile disappeared, and for a moment Ethan thought he was about to strike. But instead, Javier leaned against the washing machine, his expression unreadable. "You've got guts coming in here with that accusation," Javier said. "But you don't know what you're talking about." "I think I do," Ethan pressed. "You've been feeding him information. Maybe about my movements, maybe about the people I talk to. Whatever it is, you're helping him keep me here." Javier's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what kind of man Blake is. He doesn't just destroy you, he destroys everything you love." Ethan's mind flashed to Emily, her tear-streaked face in the courtroom, the fear in her eyes. Blake's reach wasn't just about keeping Ethan locked up, it was about keeping him from ever seeing his daughter again. "That's why you're working for him, isn't it?" Ethan said, his voice low. "Because he's got something on you." Javier's fists clenched at his sides. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand," Ethan said, taking a step closer. "If Blake is as dangerous as you say, then you know he won't stop until he's buried both of us. But if we work together, we can take him down." For a moment, Javier said nothing. His gaze flicked to the door as if weighing his options. Fight, run, or talk. Finally, he exhaled sharply, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. "You're playing with fire, Cole," he muttered. "But you're right. Blake has leverage on me. My brother's on the outside and Blake's got people watching him. If I don't cooperate, my brother's dead." Ethan's jaw tightened. Blake had turned manipulation into an art form, using fear and family as weapons. "We can protect your brother," Ethan said, "but I need information. What does Blake have planned for me?" Javier hesitated, then lowered his voice to a whisper. "Blake's not just trying to keep you in here. He's trying to get you killed. There's a hit coming. Soon." The words hit Ethan like a blow to the chest. His mind raced, piecing together the clues, the notes, the confrontation with Brock, the tension simmering around him. It wasn't paranoia, it was a countdown. "How soon?" Ethan asked. Javier shook his head. "I don't know, but if you want to survive, you'd better be ready." Ethan took a step back, his heart pounding. "Help me and I'll get your brother out of Blake's reach, but I need your help to stop this." Javier's eyes met Ethan's, and for the first time, the coldness in them thawed just a little. "I'll think about it," he said before turning back to the laundry. As Ethan walked away, his mind was already racing through possible plans. Blake's reach had extended further than he'd thought. But if Javier was telling the truth, there was one thing Ethan knew for certain. His time was running out. The clamor of metal trays, the hum of conversation, and the occasional shout filled the mess hall as prisoners gathered for dinner. Ethan sat alone at the end of a long, scratched table, his fork barely touching the grayish meat and overcooked vegetables on his plate. He wasn't here to eat, he was here to observe. The weight of Javier's warning pressed heavily on his mind. Blake's not just keeping you locked up, he's trying to get you killed. There's a hit coming. Soon. How soon was soon? Ethan's instincts, honed over years of surviving deadly missions, told him it could be any moment. He scanned the room with the precision of a man trained to assess threats under pressure. Groups of prisoners huddled together, some laughing, others exchanging hushed words. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like ordinary mealtime chatter. But to Ethan, every glance in his direction felt like a potential signal, every shift in body language a potential threat. Across the room, Brock Carter leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes locked on Ethan like a predator sizing up prey. He wasn't even trying to be subtle. The message was clear: "I'm coming for you." Ethan clenched his jaw and returned his focus to his plate. He needed to stay calm, think strategically. His time as a SEAL had taught him that reacting out of fear was a surefire way to lose control. Instead, he had to anticipate the enemy's moves and stay one step ahead. As he picked at his food, a shadow fell over his table. He looked up to see Marcus standing there, hands in his pockets, his expression guarded. Without asking for permission, Marcus slid onto the bench across from him. "Brock's been watching you all day," Marcus said, glancing subtly toward the ex-Marine. "Word is he's been offered a deal." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What kind of deal?" Marcus leaned in, keeping his voice low. "Blake's people promised to take care of some debts Brock has on the outside. In exchange, Brock's supposed to make sure you don't leave this place alive." The room seemed to shrink, the noise fading into the background as the gravity of Marcus's words sank in. Ethan had expected danger, but knowing the hitman was already chosen made it feel more real, more immediate. "How much time do I have?" Ethan asked, his tone calm despite the storm brewing inside him. Marcus shrugged. "A day? Maybe 2. Brock likes to take his time. He'll probably try to corner you in a place where there are no guards watching. The showers, the laundry room, maybe even during yard time." He paused, tapping his fingers against the table. "Unless you find a way to stop him first." Ethan considered his options. He could go on the defensive, avoid Brock and try to ride it out. But that wouldn't solve the problem. Sooner or later, Blake would send someone else. Running wasn't a solution. He had to confront this head on. "I need information on how Brock moves in here," Ethan said. "Where he spends his time. Who he talks to, where he's vulnerable." Marcus smirked. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Later that night, Ethan sat on the edge of his cot, his mind racing as he mapped out the possibilities. He couldn't just confront Brock outright. That would end with both of them in solitary confinement or worse. No, he needed to draw Brock into a situation where Ethan controlled the outcome. His thoughts were interrupted by the faint creak of footsteps outside his cell. He tensed, ready to spring to action. but the footsteps stopped just beyond the bars. A piece of paper was slipped through the bottom of the door. Ethan waited until the shadow moved on before retrieving the note. The hit is set for tomorrow morning. Showers. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He unfolded the note again, as if rereading it would change its contents. The showers. The perfect place for an accident. No cameras, minimal guard presence, and plenty of ways to make it look like a fight gone wrong. He crumpled the note in his fist. If he didn't act now, tomorrow morning could be his last. Morning arrived too quickly. The guards banged on the cell doors, shouting for the prisoners to get up and prepare for the daily routine. Ethan dressed mechanically. His senses heightened. Every sound, every movement felt magnified. He knew Brock would be watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. The line to the showers moved slowly, the smell of mildew and soap mixing with the humid air. As Ethan stepped into the tiled room, he could feel eyes on him. He scanned the area quickly. Brock was there, leaning casually against the far wall, his arms crossed as if he were waiting for a bus. Ethan turned on the shower head, letting the cold water cascade over him. His mind raced, calculating the distance between himself and Brock, analyzing the exits and potential obstacles. The room was large, with rows of shower stalls separated by half walls. The acoustics amplified every drip of water, every shuffle of feet. Brock pushed off the wall and began walking toward him. His steps were slow, deliberate. Ethan's muscles tensed, but he forced himself to stay calm, to wait for the right moment. When Brock was close enough, he spoke, his voice barely audible over the sound of running water. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" Ethan didn't respond. Brock chuckled. "Blake sends his regards." He lunged. Ethan spun around just in time, blocking the first punch with his forearm. The impact reverberated through his arm. But he didn't have time to process the pain. Brock came at him again, this time aiming for his ribs. Ethan twisted, driving his elbow into Brock's side. The room exploded into chaos. Other prisoners backed away, shouting encouragement or placing bets on who would win. The guards were nowhere to be seen, just as Ethan had expected. Brock grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the wall. The tiles were cold against his back, but adrenaline dulled the sensation. He brought his knee up, striking Brock in the stomach, then followed with a quick jab to the jaw. Brock staggered back, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wild with rage. "You think you can fight your way out of this?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he charged forward, using his momentum to tackle Brock to the ground. The sound of their bodies hitting the floor echoed through the room. Ethan pinned Brock down, his forearm pressed against the man's throat. "Who else is working with Blake?" Ethan demanded, his voice low and deadly. Brock choked out a laugh, blood staining his teeth. "You think killing me will stop him? You're already dead, Cole. You just don't know it yet." The sound of approaching footsteps, heavy, hurried, made Ethan release his grip. Guards stormed into the room, pulling him off Brock and dragging him toward the exit. As they led him away, Brock's laughter echoed behind him, a haunting reminder that the fight was far from over. Ethan's mind raced as he was shoved back into his cell, the door slamming shut behind him. The hit had failed. But Brock's words lingered like a warning. "You're already dead." Ethan knew one thing for certain. Blake's next move would be even more dangerous. And if he didn't find a way to strike first, this prison would become his grave. The dim bulb in Ethan's cell flickered, casting shadows that crawled across the walls like specters haunting his every thought. He sat on the edge of his cot, elbows resting on his knees, replaying the events of the morning in his mind. The fight with Brock, the way the guards had arrived just a second too late, as if waiting for the right amount of damage to be done. Brock's final words echoed, chilling and deliberate. "You're already dead, Cole. You just don't know it yet." Ethan's fingers clenched into fists. Brock had been a hired weapon, but he wasn't the mastermind. Blake was pulling the strings from the outside, and if Ethan didn't act soon, the next attempt on his life wouldn't fail. He couldn't survive this on his own. He needed help, but trusting anyone in this prison was like walking blindfolded across a minefield. A knock on the bars interrupted his thoughts. Marcus stood on the other side, his gaze flicking left and right to make sure no guards were watching. "Cole," he whispered, "you've got a visitor." Ethan frowned. "I don't get visitors." Marcus grinned. "You do now." He stepped aside, allowing a guard to unlock the cell door. Ethan followed them through the narrow corridors, the metallic clanging of gates opening and closing marking each step of his journey. His mind raced with possibilities. Who could it be? His ex-wife had made it painfully clear that she wanted nothing to do with him. And Emily. The thought of her made his chest ache, but he knew she wouldn't be here. The guard led him into a small, windowless room with a single table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. Sitting in one of the chairs, casually flipping through a file, was Javier Cruz. The sight of him made Ethan's pulse quicken. "You?" Ethan said, his voice edged with disbelief. Javier looked up, his lips curving into a smug smile. "Surprised to see me? Don't worry, I'm not here to finish what Brock started." Ethan sat across from him, his eyes narrowing. "Then what do you want?" Javier leaned back in his chair, tapping the file with his fingers. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about Blake, about taking him down." He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "You were right. Blake's not just a threat to you. He's a threat to anyone he can use, and that includes me and my brother. So I'm willing to help you, but I have conditions." Ethan folded his arms, leaning slightly forward. "Let's hear them." "First," Javier said, "you find a way to get my brother out of Blake's reach. He's living in Chicago, working at a shipping yard. If Blake's men come knocking, he won't stand a chance." Ethan nodded. "Agreed. What's the second condition?" Javier's smile faded, replaced by a steely determination. "When the time comes, I want a seat at the table. Blake's ruined too many lives, and I'm not walking away without my shot at him." Ethan considered the offer. He didn't trust Javier, not fully, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. And Javier had something Ethan needed: information, connections, and the kind of street-smart instincts that could keep them alive. "Deal," Ethan said. "But if you betray me, I'll make sure Blake is the least of your problems." Javier chuckled. "Fair enough." He slid the file across the table. "This is everything I've got on Brock and the other guys Blake has in here. You're not the only target. Blake's been using this prison to tie up loose ends. Political enemies, whistleblowers, anyone who could expose him. He makes them disappear and no one asks questions." Ethan flipped through the file, his jaw tightening as he read. Names, dates, photographs, evidence of a network of corruption that went deeper than he had imagined. Blake wasn't just protecting himself. He was running an operation that spanned military contracts, private security firms, and government cover-ups. "How did you get this?" Ethan asked. Looking up, Javier smirked. "I have my ways. Let's just say there's a guard on payroll who isn't loyal to the badge." Ethan's mind raced as he pieced together the puzzle. If Blake had been silencing people in this prison for years, it meant there were others like him. Prisoners who had been targeted but survived long enough to know something. He needed to find them and figure out what they knew. "We'll start by tracking down anyone on this list who's still alive," Ethan said, closing the file. "They might have pieces of the puzzle we're missing." Javier nodded. "There's a guy named Daryl Red Thompson. He's been here longer than most and knows how things work. If anyone can help, it's him, but he's a tough nut to crack." Ethan stood, sliding the file under his jumpsuit. "I've cracked tougher." Later that afternoon, Ethan found Red in the rec yard, sitting alone on a bench near the basketball court. His weathered face was partially hidden beneath a gray beanie, and his hands, calloused and scarred, held a cigarette with the ease of someone who'd seen too much and stopped caring. "Red," Ethan said, sitting down beside him. Red didn't look up. He took a long drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly before speaking. "You're the SEAL, right? The one they say killed a bunch of civilians." Ethan ignored the jab. "I need your help." Red chuckled, a dry, bitter sound. "Everyone needs help in here, kid. What makes you special?" "I'm trying to take down Carter Blake," Ethan said bluntly. That got Red's attention. He turned, studying Ethan with narrowed eyes. "Blake? Now that's a name I haven't heard in a while. You're either brave or stupid, probably both. I've been called worse. Red flicked his cigarette to the ground and crushed it under his boot. Blake's got his claws deep in this place. You go after him, you're putting a target on your back. I already have one, Ethan replied. I just need to know what you know. Blake's been using this prison to clean up his messes. You were almost one of them, weren't you? Red's expression darkened. He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. Yeah, I got too close to something I shouldn't have. Blake made sure I ended up here, but I kept my head down and stayed off his radar. You, on the other hand, you're making a lot of noise. I don't have a choice, Ethan said. He framed me. He's trying to kill me and he's using people like Brock to do it. But if we work together, we can expose him. Red was silent for a long moment, the weight of the conversation settling between them like fog. Finally, he nodded. There's a shipment coming into the prison next week. Contraband Blake's people are smuggling in. Drugs, weapons, you name it. If we can intercept it, we can prove Blake's involvement. Ethan's heart pounded. This was the break he'd been waiting for. How do we do it? Red smirked. Leave that to me. Just be ready when the time comes. As Ethan walked away, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came before a mission. The pieces were finally falling into place, but one thing was clear. The next move had to be perfect. Because in a game where trust was a weapon and betrayal was the norm, one mistake could cost him everything. The dim light in Ethan's cell barely flickered as night fell, casting long shadows that stretched across the cold, concrete floor. The air was still, heavy with the distant hum of muffled voices and the occasional clank of a guard's boots against the metal grates. But inside Ethan's mind, a storm raged. Thoughts spinning like a well-oiled machine, each one clicking into place with mechanical precision. Javier's intel, Red's involvement, the intercepted shipment, it was all coming together. But this wasn't just about collecting evidence. It was about survival. If they could intercept Blake's smuggled contraband and prove his involvement, they might stand a chance of bringing him down. But if they failed, the consequences would be fatal. He sat on the edge of the cot, the thin mattress sagging beneath him, and unfolded the map of the prison he had sketched out on scraps of paper over the past few weeks. Every corridor, every guard station, every blind spot was marked meticulously. Planning missions had always been his specialty, whether it was infiltrating an enemy compound overseas or escaping a trap set by his own country. A knock on the bars made him look up. Javier stood outside, his expression unreadable, the flickering light casting shadows across his face. The guard behind him unlocked the cell door, gesturing for them to make it quick. Figured you'd be awake, Javier said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. We don't have much time. Red just gave me the details on the shipment. Ethan folded the map and tucked it under his pillow. What's the plan? Javier leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The shipment's coming in during morning deliveries. The guards are paid off, so they'll turn a blind eye. It'll be loaded into storage behind the kitchen, where the goods are sorted before being distributed. If we can intercept it there, we can document everything. Photos, inventory lists, anything that ties it back to Blake. Ethan nodded. And Red? He's already working on getting us access to the storage area, Javier said. But we'll have a small window, maybe 10 minutes before someone notices something's off. Ethan's mind ticked through the details like a checklist. Any backup plans if things go sideways? Javier smirked. You're the SEAL, I figured you'd have that covered. Ethan chuckled softly, but the tension in the room remained thick. We need someone to cause a distraction, something big enough to draw attention away from the storage area. Javier scratched his chin, thinking. Brock's still licking his wounds after your little dance in the showers. He's got a short temper. If someone pushes the right buttons, he'll snap. Good, Ethan said. I'll handle Brock. You and Red get into the storage area and gather the evidence. Once we have it, we meet in the laundry room. That's the last place anyone will think to look for us. Javier hesitated for a moment, his gaze searching Ethan's. You sure about this? Blake's not going to roll over just because we have proof. I know, Ethan said, his voice steady. But if we don't take this shot, we'll never get another one. Morning came too soon. The blare of the alarm jolting Ethan awake. He dressed quickly, slipping the folded map into his jumpsuit before joining the line of prisoners marching toward the dining hall for breakfast. The air was thick with tension. Whether real or imagined, Ethan couldn't tell. But his instincts told him that today would be a turning point. As he entered the dining hall, his eyes locked on Brock. The ex-Marine was sitting with his usual crew, shoveling food into his mouth like a man who had nothing to lose. Perfect. Ethan grabbed his tray and walked straight toward him. Brock noticed him halfway across the room, smirking as if the memory of their fight still gave him satisfaction. "Morning, hero," Brock said, leaning back in his chair. "Come for round two?" Ethan set his tray down on the table, his movements deliberate and measured. The surrounding prisoners quieted, sensing the brewing confrontation. "You've been running your mouth a lot, Brock," Ethan said, his voice calm but laced with steel. "But we both know you're nothing without Blake pulling your strings." The smirk on Brock's face vanished, replaced by a flicker of anger. "Careful, Cole. You're not untouchable." Ethan leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm counting on it." Brock's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. His fists clenched. "You've got a death wish, don't you?" The guards in the room shifted uneasily, their hands resting on their batons, but they didn't intervene. They knew better than to get involved unless absolutely necessary. Ethan's heart pounded, but he didn't flinch. "What's the matter?" "Brock, Blake didn't train you for this." The insult hit its mark. Brock lunged, shoving Ethan backward into a table. Trays clattered to the floor as prisoners scrambled out of the way, some cheering, others placing bets. Ethan didn't fight back. He let Brock's punches land, each one serving its purpose, creating the perfect distraction. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Javier and Red slip out of the dining hall unnoticed. The storage area behind the kitchen was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of stale bread and cleaning chemicals. Javier crouched beside a stack of crates, prying one open with a crowbar while Red kept watch by the door. Inside, neatly packed rows of unmarked boxes stared back at them. Javier pulled one out and opened it, revealing small, neatly wrapped packages of drugs, cell phones, and cash. He whistled under his breath. Blake's been busy. He pulled out a small camera, snapping pictures of the contents before moving on to the next crate. "Hurry it up," Red hissed. "We don't have much time." Javier nodded, working quickly. He photographed everything: labels, packing slips, even the shipping codes that would tie the shipment back to its source. When he was done, he stuffed the camera back into his pocket and closed the crates. "We're good," he said. "Let's move." Meanwhile, in the dining hall, the fight had escalated. Ethan ducked as Brock swung a chair at him, the wood splintering against the wall. Blood dripped from a cut above Ethan's brow, but he didn't care. The chaos was exactly what he needed. Two guards finally rushed in, pulling Brock off him and shoving him against the wall. "That's enough," one of them barked, slapping cuffs on Brock's wrists. Ethan sat on the floor, breathing heavily as the guards dragged Brock away. He wiped the blood from his face, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The distraction had worked. Back in the laundry room, Ethan met Javier and Red, who were already waiting for him. Javier handed him the camera, the weight of it feeling like a lifeline in his hands. "We got everything," Javier said. "Now what?" Ethan looked at the camera, then at his two unlikely allies. "Now, we take the first step in bringing Blake down. But we're going to need one more thing, an outside connection to get this evidence out of here." Red raised an eyebrow. "You got someone in mind?" Ethan nodded. "I do, but first we need to make sure Blake doesn't know what we've got. If he finds out, this won't end with just a fight in the showers." Javier smirked. "Then we'd better move fast." As they left the laundry room, Ethan's mind was already working on the next step. Blake might have thought he'd won, but the tide was turning. And Ethan Cole wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The afternoon sky hung low over the prison yard, heavy clouds swirling like an ominous warning. The air was dense, humid, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Ethan stood by the fence, his eyes on the guard tower in the distance where the sentries patrolled with rifles slung over their shoulders. Rain would come soon. He could smell it, the earthy scent rising from the dry ground. But the storm he was waiting for wasn't in the sky. It was brewing inside these walls. He ran his thumb along the edge of the camera hidden beneath his jumpsuit. The evidence they had gathered earlier burning like a secret too big to contain. If everything went according to plan, they would deliver the proof of Blake's smuggling ring to an ally on the outside. The thought filled him with equal parts hope and dread. Hope that this was the first step to freedom. Dread that one wrong move would cost him his life. Javier approached, his footsteps quiet but urgent. "It's set," he said, sliding up beside Ethan and pretending to inspect the fence as they spoke. "Marcus is waiting near the infirmary. He's got the guard we paid off ready to smuggle the camera out during his shift change." Ethan nodded, his pulse quickening. "Did you make sure the guard won't flip on us?" Javier smirked. "Don't worry, he's greedy, not loyal. As long as the cash keeps flowing, he'll do what we tell him." But Ethan knew better than to trust greed. Greed had its limits. Fear didn't. And if Blake caught wind of what they were doing, fear would win every time. "Let's move," Ethan said, pushing off the fence. The path to the infirmary was a winding maze of hallways, the walls lined with faded posters warning prisoners about health and hygiene. Ethan kept his head down as he walked, Javier trailing a few steps behind. Their plan depended on precision, timing, stealth, and luck. Marcus was waiting outside the infirmary, leaning against the wall with the casual air of someone who wasn't about to risk his life. He straightened when he saw them, motioning toward the door. "The guard's inside. He's ready." Ethan handed Marcus the camera, the weight of it leaving his hands like a burden temporarily lifted. "Make sure he delivers it to the drop point. No detours." Marcus nodded, slipping the camera into his bag. "Don't worry, I've got this." Ethan watched him disappear into the infirmary, his gut churning. He trusted Marcus, at least as much as anyone could be trusted in this place, but the stakes were too high for mistakes. One slip, and Blake would know they had the evidence. He and Javier waited by the corner, listening to the distant hum of medical equipment and the soft murmur of voices inside. Every second felt like an eternity. Javier tapped his foot, the sound barely audible but grating on Ethan's nerves. "Relax," Javier whispered. "You're wound tighter than a spring." Ethan exhaled through his nose, forcing himself to focus. "Blake's not going to let this slide if he finds out. He'll come for us harder than before." Javier grinned. "Then we'd better make sure he doesn't find out." The door to the infirmary creaked open, and Marcus emerged, giving them a small nod as he passed by without stopping. The message was clear. The camera was on its way. Ethan's shoulders relaxed, just a little, one step down, but there was still a long way to go. "Let's split up," he said to Javier. "The less we're seen together, the better." Javier clapped him on the back, his grin widening. "See you on the other side, hero." Ethan watched him disappear down the corridor before turning in the opposite direction. Back in his cell, Ethan sat on the cot, staring at the ceiling as the weight of the day pressed down on him. The silence was suffocating, punctuated only by the distant sounds of prisoners shouting and the occasional clang of a door slamming shut. His thoughts drifted to Emily, her laughter, the way she used to run into his arms when he came home from deployment. He wondered if she still thought about him, or if her mother had erased him from her life completely. The thought of never seeing her again made his chest tighten. He had to get out of here. For her. A knock on the bars jolted him from his thoughts. He looked up to see Red standing outside, his face grim. "We've got a problem," Red said, his voice low. Ethan was on his feet in an instant. "What happened?" Red glanced down the corridor before stepping inside the cell. The guard didn't show up for his shift change. "They're saying he called in sick." Ethan's stomach dropped. Sick? Or did someone get to him? Red shrugged, but the tension in his posture spoke volumes. "Does it matter? If he's out, the camera isn't leaving the prison tonight." Ethan paced the small cell, his mind racing. This wasn't just a delay, it was a warning. Blake's reach was longer than they had anticipated, and if the guard had flipped, their plan was already compromised. "Where's Marcus now?" Ethan asked. "Keeping a low profile," Red said. "But we can't sit on this for long. If the wrong person finds that camera, we're done." Ethan stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing as a new plan formed in his mind. "We're not waiting. We'll deliver the camera ourselves." Red's eyebrows shot up. "Are you out of your mind? The entire prison is crawling with guards, and Blake's guys are probably watching us." "I know," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But the longer we wait, the more time Blake has to figure out what we're doing. We'll move during the evening shift change when the guards are rotating. It's our best shot." Red hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But if this goes south, don't say I didn't warn you." The evening air was thick with the scent of rain, the first droplet splashing against the asphalt as Ethan and Red moved through the shadows. The yard was nearly empty, most of the prisoners inside for the night. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears as they approached the storage area near the loading docks. The camera was hidden inside a toolbox that Marcus had stashed earlier, ready for retrieval. "Cover me," Ethan whispered, crouching beside the toolbox and prying it open. The camera was still there, tucked beneath a layer of tools. He grabbed it and closed the lid, his fingers trembling slightly from the adrenaline. Red scanned the perimeter. "Coast looks clear. Let's move." They made their way toward the service gate, where the evening shift guards were stationed. The plan was simple. Slip through during the shift change and hand off the camera to a trusted contact waiting just beyond the perimeter. But as they rounded the corner, Ethan's heart stopped. Two guards stood blocking the gate, their postures tense, as if they were expecting trouble. Red cursed under his breath. "They know!" Ethan's mind raced. There was no turning back now. The evidence in his hands was the key to exposing Blake, but getting caught would mean certain death. "We'll create a distraction," Ethan said, his voice calm despite the chaos in his mind. "I'll draw them away. You get the camera to the drop point." Red hesitated, but the determination in Ethan's eyes silenced any objections. "Be careful," Red said, taking the camera. Ethan nodded, then turned and sprinted toward the guards, his footsteps pounding against the wet pavement. The guards shouted, their voices cutting through the night as they chased after him. Rain began to fall harder, blurring the edges of the world around him, but he didn't stop. He had one job: to buy Red enough time to get the camera out. The storm had broken, but the real battle was just beginning. The rain came down in sheets, drenching Ethan as he sprinted across the yard. His breath came in sharp gasps, the cold sting of water mixing with the burn in his lungs. The guards' footsteps pounded behind him, their voices cutting through the storm like distant thunder. "There, by the east gate." Ethan ducked around a corner, sliding across the slick asphalt before regaining his footing. His heart pounded as he calculated his next move. He couldn't outrun them forever, but he didn't need to. He just needed to keep them occupied long enough for Red to make the drop. Behind him, the guards shouted orders, their flashlights slicing through the darkness in erratic beams. Ethan's pulse quickened as he scanned the area, searching for cover. He spotted an overturned supply cart near the maintenance shed and dove behind it, pressing his back against the cold metal. Rain dripped from his hair into his eyes, blurring his vision as he peeked around the edge of the cart. The guards were closing in, their boots splashing through puddles as they moved toward him. He could hear their radios crackling, the static-laced voices of reinforcements being called in. Time was running out. Ethan reached down, grabbing a loose piece of scrap metal from the ground. He hurled it across the yard where it clanged loudly against a metal gate. The noise echoed through the storm, and the guards immediately shifted direction, running toward the sound. "Move, move! He's heading for the south gate!" Ethan exhaled, his breath visible in the cold night air. He had bought himself a few precious seconds, but it wouldn't last long. He needed to find a way back inside without being seen. Meanwhile, Red was running his own race against time. The camera was tucked securely under his jumpsuit, bouncing against his chest as he weaved through the shadows. He could feel the weight of it, not just physically, but emotionally. This small piece of equipment held their entire future. The drop point was near the old delivery dock. a rusted gate that hadn't been used in years. Beyond it, their contact, a man paid off by Marcus, would be waiting to smuggle the evidence out. But as Red rounded the corner, his heart sank. A guard was stationed near the gate, his flashlight sweeping the area. Red ducked behind a stack of crates, cursing under his breath. The guard was too close to the drop point, and there was no way to slip by unnoticed. He could wait for the guard to move, but every second wasted increased the risk of getting caught. He needed another option. Suddenly, he heard a faint whistle from the other side of the gate. Their contact was signaling him. The sound ignited a spark of determination in Red's chest. He wasn't going to let this fall apart now. He scanned the area, his mind racing for a solution. His eyes settled on a rusted pipe lying on the ground nearby. It wasn't much, but it would do. Grabbing the pipe, he took a deep breath and hurled it toward the far end of the dock. The pipe clattered against the concrete, drawing the guard's attention. "What the hell was that?" the guard muttered, shining his flashlight in the direction of the noise. Red didn't wait to see what happened next. He bolted from his hiding spot, racing toward the gate as the rain pelted his face. His fingers fumbled with the latch, slick with water, but he managed to lift it just enough to slide the camera through the gap. A hand reached out from the other side, grabbing the camera and pulling it into the shadows. "It's done," Red whispered, the words barely audible over the pounding rain. He let the gate fall back into place and turned to leave, his heart racing. He had done his part. Now it was up to the contact to deliver the camera to the outside world. Ethan slipped through a maintenance door, his clothes soaked and clinging to his skin. The hallways were dimly lit, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing in the background. He moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as he made his way back toward his cell. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Had Red made the drop? Was the camera on its way to freedom, or had something gone wrong? He couldn't afford to dwell on it. Right now, his priority was blending back in, making it look like he had spent the evening just like any other prisoner. As he approached his cell, the sound of voices made him stop. Two guards were standing just a few feet away, their conversation barely audible over the hum of the ventilation system. "You hear about the fight this morning?" one of them said, chuckling. "Cole and Brock damn near tore each other apart." The other guard grunted. "Yeah, well, Blake's not happy. Word is he wanted Cole taken care of quietly, and now everyone's talking about it. If Cole keeps stirring up trouble, it won't be long before Blake sends someone else to finish the job." Ethan's blood ran cold. He backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. Blake wasn't just waiting for another opportunity. He was actively planning it. The fight with Brock had only bought him a little time, and the failed hit meant the next attempt would be even deadlier. When the guards moved on, Ethan slipped into his cell and locked the door behind him. He leaned against the wall, his chest heaving as he processed what he had heard. Blake's reach was everywhere, but for the first time in weeks, Ethan didn't feel powerless. The evidence was out. If everything went according to plan, the world outside would soon know the truth. Blake's empire would begin to crumble, and Ethan's path to freedom would finally be within reach. But the fight wasn't over yet. Just before dawn, Ethan was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps approaching his cell. He sat up, his senses on high alert, as the footsteps stopped just outside his door. A piece of paper slid through the bars, landing on the floor. Ethan hesitated for a moment before picking it up. The message was short, written in the same hurried block letters as before. "They know." His stomach dropped. He crumpled the note in his hand, his mind racing. Who knew? Blake's men? The guards? Or had the contact been compromised before the camera made it out? A sense of urgency gripped him, but he forced himself to stay calm. There were still moves to be made, still pieces on the board. But now, the stakes had risen even higher. Ethan sat on the edge of his cot, the rain still tapping softly against the window. One thing was clear. Blake wasn't just a step ahead anymore. He was right on Ethan's heels, and if Ethan didn't act fast, he wouldn't live long enough to see the storm clear. The sky outside was a dull, overcast gray, The rain reduced to a faint drizzle that pattered against the windows of the prison. But inside, the storm raged on, unseen by anyone except those caught in its vortex. Ethan paced the length of his cell, the crumpled note still clutched in his hand like a burning ember. They know. 2 words, simple yet explosive. The meaning behind them was clear. Someone inside the prison had discovered their plan. Whether it was Blake's informants, a traitorous guard, or an oversight on their part. The result was the same. Ethan was running out of time. A knock on the bars startled him. He looked up to see Red standing there, his face tense, lips pressed into a grim line. Without waiting for an invitation, Red slipped inside the cell and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We've got a problem," Red said. Ethan scoffed. "You don't say." He held up the note. "How bad is it?" "Worse than you think," Red replied. "One of Blake's men, some thug named Daniels, has been asking questions about you and Javier. He's putting together pieces fast. If he figures out what we did with the camera, we're done." Ethan's jaw tightened. Daniels. He knew the name, one of Brock's closest allies, a man who thrived on violence and intimidation. If Daniels was on their trail, it was only a matter of time before he acted. "Where's Javier?" Ethan asked. Red hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "That's the other problem. I haven't seen him since last night." A knot of dread twisted in Ethan's stomach. Javier wasn't the type to disappear without a reason. Either he was hiding, or he'd been caught. Ethan grabbed his jacket and zipped it up. "Then we find him before Daniels does." The rec yard was emptier than usual, the wet ground and cold wind keeping most prisoners indoors. A few diehards clustered near the weight benches, lifting rusted metal plates and grunting with effort. Ethan scanned the area, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for any sign of Javier. "Over there," Red said, nodding toward the far corner of the yard. Javier was leaning against the fence, his back turned to them. He looked different, tense, agitated, as if he were carrying the weight of 1,000 secrets. His fingers drummed against the chain link, the rhythmic tapping betraying his anxiety. "Something's off," Ethan muttered as they approached. When they reached him, Javier turned around quickly, his eyes darting past them to make sure they were alone. His face was pale and a faint bruise darkened his jawline. "What happened to you?" Ethan asked, lowering his voice. Javier wiped his mouth, avoiding eye contact. "Had a little run-in with Daniels last night." Red swore under his breath. "And you didn't think to tell us?" "I didn't want to bring heat down on you," Javier said. He glanced around the yard again, his paranoia palpable. "Daniels cornered me near the laundry room, said he knows we're up to something and that Blake's not happy. He didn't say how much he knows, but it's enough to put a target on my back." Ethan studied him, noting the way Javier's hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just fear. This was someone on the verge of breaking. And in their line of work, a crack like that could be fatal. "We need to hit back before Daniel spreads this any further," Ethan said. "If he tells the wrong people, we're finished." Javier shook his head. "You don't understand. Daniels isn't working alone. He's got a crew and they're watching us right now. We can't make a move without them knowing." Ethan's mind raced. He thought back to his years in the field, to the covert operations where every second mattered. You didn't always need brute force to win. Sometimes, all you needed was the right bait to lure the enemy into your trap. "What if we turn the tables?" Ethan said, a plan forming as he spoke. "We set Daniels up, make him think we're vulnerable, like he's one step ahead. Then when he comes for us, we ambush him and take him out of play." Red frowned. "You're talking about baiting the guy who's been hunting us. That's risky." "So is doing nothing," Ethan replied. "But if we take Daniels down, we can send a message to Blake that we're not easy targets. It'll buy us time." Javier rubbed his hands over his face, the conflict evident in his eyes. "How do you plan to pull this off?" "We make him think I'm meeting someone in the storage room tonight to hand off more evidence," Ethan said. "Word will get back to Daniels and he'll show up to stop me. But instead of me, he'll find both of you waiting for him." "And you?" Red asked. I'll make sure he doesn't have any backup, Ethan said. Divide and conquer. Red exhaled sharply, nodding. It's risky, but it could work. If Daniels thinks he's about to score a big win, he'll come running. Javier hesitated, then finally nodded. Okay, but if this goes sideways, it won't, Ethan said, cutting him off. We've got one shot at this and we're going to make it count. The prison felt different that night, quieter, darker, as if the storm outside had seeped into its bones. Ethan waited near the east wing, hidden in the shadows of a maintenance corridor. He could hear the faint echo of guards making their rounds, the occasional clink of keys against metal. His job was simple: keep Daniel's backup occupied. According to Red's intel, 2 of Daniel's men were stationed near the east gate, ready to move if anything went wrong. Ethan's task was to ensure they never got the chance. He crouched behind a stack of crates, watching as the 2 men leaned against the wall, smoking cigarettes and chatting. They were relaxed, unaware that the game was already in motion. Ethan picked up a small rock and threw it across the corridor. It clattered loudly against the floor, causing the men to straighten, their eyes scanning the darkness. Go check it out, one of them said. The second man grumbled but obeyed, stepping away from the gate and heading toward the source of the noise. As soon as he was out of sight, Ethan pounced. He grabbed the man from behind, clamping a hand over his mouth and driving him into the wall. The man struggled, but Ethan was stronger, more determined. A swift strike to the back of the neck knocked him unconscious. 1 down. Ethan turned his attention to the second man, who was still investigating the noise. He moved quickly, using the element of surprise to take him down with a chokehold. Within seconds, both men were out cold, their bodies hidden behind the crates. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow and checked his watch. The ambush in the storage room should be happening right about now. In the dimly lit storage room, Javier and Red waited in silence, their backs pressed against the wall. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. Javier tightened his grip on the pipe in his hand, his heart pounding as the door creaked open. Daniels stepped inside, a smug grin on his face. Well, what do we have here? Before he could react, Red struck first, swinging his makeshift weapon with all his strength. The impact sent Daniels crashing to the floor, groaning in pain. Javier loomed over him, breathing heavily. Blake's going to have to find a new errand boy. Daniels coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. You think this changes anything? Blake knows everything. You're dead men walking. Javier knelt down, grabbing Daniels by the collar. We'll see about that. As Red tied Daniels' hands with a strip of cloth, Ethan slipped into the room, his expression grim but determined. Nice work, Ethan said, nodding to both of them. Now let's send a message Blake won't forget. Daniels' eyes widened in fear as Ethan leaned down, his voice cold and steady. Tell Blake we're coming for him next. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly, casting a dim yellowish hue over the prison corridor as Ethan, Javier and Red made their way back to their cells. The scent of wet concrete and sweat filled the air, mingling with the faint hum of the distant rain tapping against the roof. Daniels had been left tied up and bruised in the storage room, but Ethan knew it wouldn't take long for Blake's men or the guards on his payroll to find him. The question wasn't if they'd retaliate. It was when. Ethan's knuckles ached from the tension of the night. His plan had worked, so far, but every step forward felt like treading on thin ice. As they approached a junction in the hallway, Red slowed, his brow furrowed with concern. Splitting up now might be risky, Red said, glancing over his shoulder. Blake's men could be waiting around any corner. Ethan shook his head. If we stick together, we'll be easier to spot. We'll meet tomorrow in the rec yard. Keep your heads down until then. Red hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Just don't get yourself killed before sunrise. Same to you, Ethan replied, clapping Red on the shoulder before watching him disappear down a separate corridor. Javier lingered for a moment, his eyes flicking toward Ethan. You really think tying up Daniels will scare Blake? It's not about scaring him, Ethan said. It's about buying time. He paused, lowering his voice. "But if Blake knows the evidence is out there, he's going to get desperate. That's when we strike." Javier nodded, his expression hardening. "I hope you're right." As Javier turned and walked away, Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of the night settling heavily on his chest. He made his way back to his cell, slipping inside just as the night shift guard passed by. He sat on the edge of his cot, running a hand through his damp hair and let his mind race. The plan was holding, for now, but everything hinged on whether the evidence had made it into the right hands outside the prison. If their contact had been intercepted, or if the camera had been lost, then everything they'd done tonight would be for nothing. The thought was interrupted by a knock on the bars of his cell. Ethan looked up, his body tensing instinctively. A guard stood there, his face expressionless as he gestured for Ethan to follow him. "You've got a visitor," the guard said. Ethan's stomach twisted. "Who?" He followed the guard down the dimly lit corridor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. They passed rows of cells, most of them dark and quiet, the prisoners inside asleep or pretending to be. The air grew colder as they neared the visitation room, the chill sinking into Ethan's bones. When the guard opened the door and motioned him inside, Ethan stepped through, his eyes immediately scanning the room. At first it seemed empty. Then, "Visitor," the guard said. Ethan's stomach twisted. "Who?" He followed the guard down the dimly lit corridor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. They passed rows of cells, most of them dark and quiet, the prisoners inside asleep or pretending to be. The air grew colder as they neared the visitation room, the chill sinking into Ethan's bones. When the guard opened the door and motioned him inside, Ethan stepped through, his eyes immediately scanning the room. At first it seemed empty. Then, from the shadows in the far corner, a man emerged and took a seat at the table. Ethan's breath hitched. Carter Blake. The man was dressed impeccably, as if he were attending a business meeting rather than visiting the man he had framed. His gray suit was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, but it was his eyes, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of remorse, that made Ethan's pulse spike. Blake leaned back in the chair, clasping his hands in front of him as he studied Ethan with a smug smile. "You've been busy, Cole." Ethan sat across from him, his body rigid. "I'm surprised you showed up. You usually hide behind other people." Blake chuckled softly, as if amused by the insult. "I thought it was time we had a little chat. You've been causing quite a stir, and I'm here to offer you a way out of this mess." Ethan leaned forward, his fists clenching under the table. "I'm not interested in your deals, Blake. The only way out of this is through you." Blake's smile didn't falter. "You always were stubborn. It's one of the reasons you were such a good SEAL. But stubbornness has a cost." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "How's your daughter, Cole?" "Emily, isn't it?" Ethan's breath caught in his throat, but he forced himself to keep his expression neutral. Inside, a fire ignited, burning hotter than the rage he had felt when the guilty verdict was read. Blake mentioning Emily wasn't a coincidence. It was a threat. "You don't get to talk about her," Ethan said through gritted teeth. Blake shrugged, feigning innocence. "I'm just making conversation. After all, she's the reason you're fighting so hard, isn't she? But the thing about kids is, they're vulnerable, so easily hurt." Ethan's fist slammed against the table, the metal rattling loudly. The guard outside the door glanced in but didn't intervene. "You lay a hand on her and I swear—" Blake held up a hand, cutting him off. "Relax, Cole. I'm not the one you need to worry about, but if you don't start cooperating, I can't guarantee her safety." Ethan forced himself to sit back, his breathing ragged as he fought to control the storm inside him. "What do you want?" Blake's smile widened. "There it is, the question I was waiting for." He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "I want you to destroy whatever evidence you have against me. Call off your little allies. Stop playing the hero and accept your fate. Do that and I'll make sure Emily lives a long, happy life." Ethan stared at him, the weight of the offer pressing down like a vice around his chest. The logical part of him knew this was a trap, That even if he agreed, Blake wouldn't keep his word. But the thought of Emily in danger made logic irrelevant. Blake leaned forward again, his tone softening as if they were old friends. "You're a smart man, Ethan. You know you can't win this. Even if the evidence gets out, it won't be enough. I have people everywhere, judges, military officials, politicians. They'll bury this before it even reaches a courtroom. But if you back off now, you can save her." Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Ethan's mind raced, weighing his options. He could play along, pretend to give in, and use the time to strike back. Or he could reject Blake outright and risk Emily's safety. Neither choice felt like victory, only survival. Finally, he leaned forward, locking eyes with Blake. "You think you've already won, but you've underestimated me before and it's going to cost you." Blake's smile faltered, just for a second. "You want me to call off the fight?" Ethan continued, his voice steady. "Then you'd better kill me right now. Because as long as I'm breathing, I'm coming for you." Blake's expression hardened, the smug facade slipping. "You're making a mistake, Cole." "No," Ethan said, standing. "You did when you framed me." The guard opened the door, motioning for Ethan to leave. As he stepped out, he heard Blake's final warning. His voice cold and venomous. "You won't get another chance, Cole. Walk away or I'll burn everything you love to the ground." Ethan didn't respond. He walked back to his cell, his mind buzzing with adrenaline and fury. Blake's threat had been real, but so was Ethan's resolve. This wasn't over, if anything. It had just begun. The morning sun struggled to pierce through the thick clouds that hung low over the prison yard, casting a dull gray light over the cracked asphalt. Ethan sat on a bench near the fence, his arms draped casually over the backrest, but his mind was anything but relaxed. Blake's visit the night before had been a calculated move, a reminder that even behind bars, Blake held the power. But what Blake didn't realize was that Ethan had no intention of backing down. If anything, the threat against Emily had lit a fire that wouldn't be extinguished until Blake was taken down for good. Red approached, his footsteps quick and purposeful. He slid onto the bench next to Ethan, keeping his voice low. "Javier's got news. Says he found out where Blake's next shipment is coming in. This one's bigger than the last. We intercept it, and we'll have all the proof we need." Ethan's fingers tapped against the bench as he processed the information. They had already risked everything to get the first piece of evidence out, and Blake had responded by tightening his grip. This time, they couldn't just intercept the shipment. They had to destroy it and cut off Blake's supply chain inside the prison. "Where's Javier now?" Ethan asked. "Waiting near the kitchens," Red replied. "We didn't want to risk talking out in the open for too long." Ethan stood, his muscles tense and ready. "Let's move." The kitchen smelled of grease and overcooked vegetables, the air thick and humid from the industrial ovens. Prisoners shuffled around with trays of food, and guards leaned lazily against the walls, uninterested in the routine chaos. Ethan and Red slipped through the crowd, making their way to the back where Javier was waiting by a stack of crates. Javier's face was serious, his usual smirk replaced by a grim determination. "Blake's next shipment comes in tonight through the south gate. It's supposed to be a covert drop, but one of the guards tipped me off. They're bringing in weapons, drugs, and enough cash to keep the guards on Blake's payroll happy for months." Ethan folded his arms, his mind already calculating the risks. "If we take this shipment, Blake won't be able to bribe his way out of trouble. But we can't just intercept it like last time. We need to make sure it never reaches its destination." Javier nodded. "There's a storage shed near the gate. If we can get the crates in there, I've got a way to torch them. No evidence, no payout for Blake. And no backup plan for him," Red added. "He'll be scrambling." Ethan's gaze shifted between them, the pieces of the plan falling into place. But one thing still nagged at him. Blake wouldn't let this go unanswered. If they went through with this, the retaliation would be swift and brutal. "Once we burn the shipment, Blake's going to come after us hard," Ethan said. "We need an exit strategy." Javier leaned against the wall, smirking faintly. "Already thought of that. The guard who tipped me off owes me a favor." He can get us access to the maintenance tunnels under the east wing. We lay low there until the heat dies down." Ethan nodded. It was risky, but it was their best shot. Then we moved tonight. The sun had barely set when they gathered near the south gate, the shadows of the prison stretching long across the ground. The air was damp and heavy, the distant sound of rain threatening to return at any moment. Ethan crouched behind a stack of pallets, his eyes locked on the gate as they waited for the drop. Javier checked his watch, his breath visible in the cool night air. Any minute now. Ethan scanned the area, noting the positions of the guards and potential escape routes. His senses were on high alert, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. If something went wrong, they wouldn't have time to regroup. The sound of an engine broke the silence, and a black delivery truck pulled up to the gate. 2 men jumped out, their movements quick and efficient as they unloaded several crates onto a dolly. The guards nearby barely paid attention, clearly part of the operation. "There's the target," Red whispered. Ethan nodded. "Wait for my signal." They watched as the crates were wheeled toward the storage shed, the men moving with practiced precision. When the last crate was inside, the delivery team locked the shed and walked back toward the truck, unaware they were being watched. "Now," Ethan said, rising from his position. They moved swiftly, sticking to the shadows as they approached the shed. Javier produced a pair of wire cutters from his pocket and quickly snipped the lock. The door creaked open, revealing stacks of crates labeled with cryptic codes. Ethan grabbed the nearest one and pried it open, revealing rows of untraceable firearms wrapped in plastic. "Blake's been busy," Javier muttered, pulling out a lighter and a small bottle of accelerant from his jacket. Ethan helped him douse the crates, the smell of gasoline filling the air. "Make sure it all goes up in flames. We can't leave anything behind." Javier nodded, lighting the edge of a rag and tossing it into the pile. Flames erupted instantly, the fire consuming the crates with a hungry roar. Smoke billowed toward the ceiling, the orange glow casting eerie shadows across the walls. Red stood by the door, keeping watch. "We need to get out of here before someone notices the smoke." Ethan grabbed Javier's arm, pulling him toward the exit. "Let's go." They slipped out of the shed and disappeared into the night, their footsteps muffled by the damp ground. The sound of distant shouts confirmed what Ethan had expected. Someone had seen the fire. Guards would be swarming the area within minutes. "This way," Javier said, leading them toward the maintenance tunnel entrance. The tunnel was dark and cramped, the air damp and stale. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating small puddles along the floor. Ethan's footsteps echoed as he followed Javier deeper into the maze of concrete passages. They finally stopped at a small alcove where they could catch their breath without fear of being spotted. Ethan leaned against the wall, wiping sweat and soot from his face. "That should set Blake back," Red said, grinning despite the tension. "He's not going to recover from this easily." Ethan nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. The destruction of the shipment was a victory, but it wasn't the end. Blake would retaliate, and when he did, they needed to be ready. Javier slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. "We've made our move, now what?" Ethan stared into the darkness of the tunnel, his resolve hardening. "Now we prepare for Blake's counterattack. He's going to come for us, and when he does, we make sure it's the last mistake he ever makes." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the tunnel for a brief moment before plunging them back into darkness. The storm was far from over, but Ethan knew that storms didn't last forever. This one would end, with Blake's empire reduced to ashes. The muffled hum of chaos filtered through the damp walls of the maintenance tunnel. Shouts echoed from above as guards barked orders, their radios crackling with frantic messages about the fire raging near the south gate. The air was thick with the scent of burnt wood and gasoline, lingering even this far underground. Ethan leaned against the cold concrete wall, catching his breath. Sweat and soot clung to his skin, mixing with the rainwater that had soaked him during their escape. His chest rose and fell rapidly, but his mind was already ahead, calculating their next steps. Javier sat on the ground, back pressed against the wall, his face hidden in the crook of his arm as he tried to steady his breathing. Red paced nearby, his footsteps splashing lightly in the shallow puddles that dotted the tunnel floor. "Listen," Red said, pausing mid-step. "They're swarming the yard. We don't have long before someone starts checking down here." "We expected that," Ethan replied, his voice calm despite the tension gripping his body. He knelt down and pulled a folded map from his jacket pocket, spreading it across the wet floor. The lines and notes scribbled in pen told the story of months of planning, but tonight's events had pushed them into a new phase, one they couldn't fully control. "We moved toward the East Wing exit," Ethan said, tracing the route with his finger. "From there we split up. Javier, you take the north tunnel toward the laundry room. Red and I will head toward the boiler room. We regroup tomorrow at the supply closet near the gym." Javier lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot and tired. "What if we don't make it out of here?" Ethan met his gaze, the weight of the question settling heavily between them. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Then we fight like hell, but we didn't come this far to die in a tunnel." Javier let out a bitter laugh, rubbing his hands over his face. "You've got away with motivation, Cole." Ethan cracked a small smile, but it faded quickly. "We're not done yet. Let's move." The tunnels were dark and winding, the sound of dripping water and the occasional scurry of rats their only company. Every turn felt like a gamble, every shadow a potential threat. Ethan's ears strained to detect any sound beyond their own footsteps, but so far, they had managed to stay ahead of the search teams above. As they approached a junction, Ethan signaled for them to stop. He pressed his ear against the wall, listening. Faint voices echoed from the corridor to their left, too distant to make out the words but close enough to spark urgency. "We're cutting it close," Red whispered. Ethan nodded, motioning for them to continue. But as they turned the next corner, a loud clang of metal against concrete made them freeze. Ethan's heart skipped a beat, his instincts screaming at him to move. He turned just in time to see a flashlight beam sweep across the tunnel. "Run!" he barked, grabbing Javier by the arm and pulling him forward. They sprinted through the narrow passage, their footsteps splashing through puddles as shouts erupted behind them. The beam of light flickered wildly, bouncing off the damp walls as the guards gave chase. Ethan's lungs burned, but he pushed forward, adrenaline propelling him faster than he thought possible. They rounded another corner, and the faint glow of an overhead maintenance light came into view. "There!" Red shouted, pointing toward a metal grate partially hidden by debris. Ethan didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees and yanked the grate free, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. Javier crawled through first, followed by Red. Ethan slid in last, pulling the grate back into place just as the guards' footsteps thundered past the junction. They sat in silence, their breaths heavy and labored. The glow from the overhead light barely illuminated their surroundings, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. "We can't keep running like this," Javier said, his voice strained. "Blake's got men everywhere." Ethan leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. Javier wasn't wrong. The destruction of the shipment had put Blake on high alert, and now they were fugitives within the prison, hunted by both guards and Blake's men, but running wasn't their only option. "We're not running," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We're going to take control of this situation." Red raised an eyebrow. "You got a plan, or are we just improvising at this point?" "A little of both," Ethan admitted. He wiped the sweat from his brow and sat forward, his gaze sharp. "Blake thinks he's untouchable because he controls the guards and the supply chain. But he's forgotten one thing. Prisons run on loyalty, and loyalty can be bought or broken." Javier frowned. "You're saying we flip someone on the inside?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "We find someone high enough in the chain to turn against Blake. Someone who knows the inner workings of the prison and can give us the leverage we need to expose him." "And where do we find someone like that?" Red asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Ethan's mind went to the guard who had tipped off Javier about the shipment. If they could convince him to talk or threaten him into compliance, they could gain access to information that could cripple Blake's operation from the inside. "Leave that to me," Ethan said. "For now, we lay low. We've rattled Blake's cage and he's going to be scrambling to regain control. That's when we strike. Javier let out a long breath, nodding reluctantly. You've got guts, Cole. I'll give you that. Ethan smirked, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on him. Guts won't be enough. We need to be smarter than him. The next morning, the prison hummed with tension. Guards patrolled the hallways in pairs, their eyes scanning every inmate with suspicion. Whispers of the fire and the chaos it had caused spread like wildfire, but no one knew exactly who was responsible, yet. Ethan kept his head down as he made his way to the rec yard, blending in with the crowd of prisoners. He spotted Red near the fence, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. They're looking for us, Red said as Ethan approached. But so far no one's talking. Good, Ethan replied. The longer they're in the dark, the better. Before he could say more, Javier jogged up to them, his face pale. We've got a problem. Ethan's stomach tightened. What is it? Daniels, Javier said. He's out of the infirmary and he's talking to Blake. If he tells him everything, Ethan cut him off. He won't get the chance. Red crossed his arms. You're planning on silencing him, aren't you? Ethan didn't flinch. We can't let him connect the dots. If Daniels reveals what we've done, Blake will know exactly where to hit us. Silence fell between them, the weight of the decision pressing down like a heavy fog. Ethan knew what had to be done. Daniels was a threat, and threats needed to be neutralized. This ends tonight, Ethan said, his voice firm. We deal with Daniels, then we go after Blake. No more running. Javier and Red exchanged a glance, then nodded. Let's finish this, Red said. As they walked back toward the cell block, Ethan's thoughts were laser-focused. The storm they had started was reaching its peak, and when it broke, only one side would be left standing. And Ethan would make damn sure it was them. The prison at night had its own rhythm, a symphony of distant footsteps, the rattle of keys and the occasional clank of a cell door being locked. For most prisoners, the night was a reprieve, a chance to escape into dreams where the walls of this place didn't exist. But for Ethan Cole, tonight wasn't about sleep. It was about survival. He sat on the edge of his cot, fingers interlaced as he rested his elbows on his knees. The dim light from the overhead bulb flickered, casting shifting shadows across the cold cement walls. His breathing was steady, but his heart thumped like a war drum in his chest. Daniels won't go quietly, Javier had warned before they split up earlier in the rec yard. He's got nothing to lose. And that made him dangerous. But Ethan had faced men like Daniels before, desperate. Reckless men who clung to power with bloody fingers. The trick was to strike before they had a chance to react. A knock on the bars jolted him out of his thoughts. Red stood on the other side, his eyes hard, lips pressed into a thin line. It's time, Red said quietly. Ethan nodded, standing and stretching his stiff muscles. He grabbed the small shiv he had made from a piece of scrap metal and tucked it into his waistband. He didn't intend to use it, but in a place like this, intentions didn't always matter. They moved silently through the dimly lit corridor, keeping to the shadows as they navigated the maze of cell blocks. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of mildew and sweat. Most of the inmates were asleep, their snores blending into the background noise, but a few watched from their cells, their eyes glinting with curiosity. Where's Javier? Ethan whispered. Already waiting, Red replied. Ethan's jaw tightened. If everything went according to plan, Daniels would be neutralized by the end of the night. But if something went wrong, the fallout could be catastrophic. Blake would retaliate with a vengeance, and there would be no safe place left in the prison. They turned a corner and slipped into the laundry room, where piles of dirty linens filled the air with the acrid smell of bleach and sweat. Javier was crouched near the industrial washers, his head snapping up as they entered. Daniels is in the back, Javier whispered, nodding toward the far end of the room. Guards on break, we've got about 10 minutes. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. Let's make them count. Daniels was leaning against a metal table, sorting through a pile of clean uniforms when Ethan approached. His head was down, but his posture was relaxed, as if he didn't have a care in the world. But that was the thing about men like Daniels. They didn't worry because they thought they were untouchable. Ethan stopped a few feet away, his presence finally catching Daniel's attention. The man looked up, his smug grin faltering for a split second before returning. "Well, if it isn't the troublemaker," Daniels drawled, tossing a uniform onto the table. "What's the matter, Cole? You come to beg me not to rat you out?" Ethan smiled faintly, but there was no warmth behind it. "Something like that," Daniels chuckled, stepping closer, his confidence radiating off him like heat from a fire. "You're in over your head, Cole. Blake's got this place wired tight. One word from me and you're done. You think you can stop that?" "I don't need to stop Blake," Ethan said calmly. "I just need to stop you." Daniels's grin twisted into a snarl, and before Ethan could blink, the man lunged at him, fists swinging. Ethan sidestepped the first punch, his instincts kicking in like muscle memory from years of combat training. The second punch grazed his shoulder, but he retaliated with a swift elbow to Daniel's ribs, knocking the wind out of him. Daniel staggered back, gasping for air. "You son of a..." Ethan didn't give him a chance to recover. He grabbed Daniels by the collar and slammed him against the wall, the impact reverberating through the room. "You think you can control me with threats?" Ethan hissed, his face inches from Daniel's. "I've survived worse than you, but you're just a pawn, and I'm about to take you off the board." Daniel struggled against him, but Ethan tightened his grip, pinning him in place. Behind him, he heard Javier and Red moving into position, blocking the exits to ensure no one interrupted them. "You're making a mistake," Daniel spat, his voice laced with desperation. "Blake won't stop. You take me out and he'll send someone worse." "Let him," Ethan said. "I'm ready." Daniel's eyes flicked between Ethan and the others, his bravado crumbling. For the first time, the man looked afraid. "What do you want?" "I want you to disappear," Ethan said. "Tonight, leave the laundry room, stay quiet, and don't come near us again. If you do next time, I won't be so generous." Daniel swallowed hard, the fight draining from him. "Fine, I'll back off." Ethan released him, watching as the man stumbled forward, rubbing his bruised ribs. Daniels glared at them one last time before limping toward the exit. When the door closed behind him, Javier let out a breath of relief. "You think he'll stay quiet?" Javier asked. "No," Ethan replied, "but he'll think twice before making his next move." Red crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "And what about Blake? Daniels was just one piece of the puzzle. Blake's still out there, and he's going to be pissed when he finds out we've been dismantling his operation." Ethan nodded, his gaze hardening. "Let him be pissed. It means we're getting to him." Javier smirked. "So what's next, boss?" Ethan's mind was already moving ahead, piecing together the next steps. The destruction of the shipment had crippled Blake's supply chain, and taking Daniels out of the equation had weakened his network inside the prison. But they weren't done. They still needed one final blow, something that would expose Blake publicly and make it impossible for him to recover. "Next," Ethan said, "we go after his strongest ally in here, the warden." Red raised an eyebrow. "You want to take on the warden? That's a death wish." "Not if we play it right," Ethan replied. "The warden's been covering for Blake, but he's also got something to lose. We find out what it is, and we make sure he knows he can't protect Blake anymore." Javier nodded slowly, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "You really think we can pull this off?" Ethan's gaze was steady, his resolve unshakable. "We don't have a choice. If we don't finish this, Blake will finish us." The room fell silent, the weight of their mission settling over them like a heavy cloak. But underneath the tension, there was something else. Hope. For the first time since Ethan had been thrown into this nightmare, he could see a path forward. And this time, he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to win. The prison's administrative wing was a fortress within a fortress, tucked away from the chaos of the general population. Its sterile white walls and fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the grim reality of life behind bars. The warden's office was the epicenter of power, a place where decisions were made that could make or break lives. For years, Warden Leonard Briggs had wielded that power with quiet ruthlessness. But tonight, Ethan Cole intended to tear it from his hands. Ethan crouched in the shadow of the stairwell, listening intently as a pair of guards passed by, their boots thudding against the linoleum floor. The soft murmur of their conversation faded as they turned the corner, leaving the hallway empty. He glanced back at Javier and Red, who were crouched behind him. Javier gave a quick nod, his eyes sharp and alert. Red cracked his knuckles, a grim smile playing on his lips. "This better work," Red muttered. "It will," Ethan replied. "We've come too far to back out now." The plan was simple in theory, but dangerous in execution. While most of the prison was focused on cleaning up the aftermath of the fire near the south gate, Ethan and his team would slip into the warden's office, access his files, and find the evidence they needed to expose his involvement with Blake. The goal wasn't just to discredit the warden, it was to sever the chain of protection Blake had relied on for years. "Let's move," Ethan said, leading them down the corridor. They moved silently, their footsteps muffled by the rubber soles of their shoes. The glow of the overhead lights created patches of shadow where they could momentarily disappear if needed. As they reached the door to the warden's office, Ethan pulled out the stolen keycard Javier had lifted from a guard during lunch. He swiped the card across the reader, and the door clicked open. Inside, the office was eerily quiet. The only sound the hum of the air conditioning. The room was meticulously organized. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a large oak desk sat in the center. Its surface spotless except for a computer and a framed photo of the warden shaking hands with a state senator. Ethan shut the door behind them and locked it. "Javier, you're on the computer. See if you can find anything connecting Briggs to Blake's shipments." Javier slid into the chair and powered on the computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'll dig through the financial records first. Guys like Briggs always leave a paper trail. They just think no one's smart enough to follow it." Red moved to the filing cabinets, yanking open drawers and thumbing through folders. "There's gotta be something physical in here. No way he's keeping all his dirty secrets on a computer." Ethan stayed by the door, listening for any signs of approaching footsteps. His nerves were taut, his senses heightened. The weight of everything they had done over the past few weeks pressed down on him, but he couldn't afford to let fear creep in. "Got something," Javier said, his voice low but triumphant. He turned the monitor toward Ethan and Red. "Briggs has been funneling money from the prison's budget into offshore accounts. Guess who's listed as a co-signer on several of the transfers?" Ethan leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he read the screen. "Carter Blake. That's the link we need," Ethan said. "Can you download the files?" "Already on it," Javier replied, inserting a flash drive into the computer. "But we need more than just financial records. We need something that ties Briggs directly to the shipments." Red rifled through another drawer, then froze. "I think I've got it." He pulled out a folder labeled Special Operations and laid it on the desk. Inside were manifests, shipping logs, and correspondence between the warden and several private contractors, including a letter from Blake detailing the latest shipment. "This is it," Red said, flipping through the documents. "He's been overseeing the entire operation." Ethan's mind raced. With these files, they could expose the warden and force the state to investigate the corruption within the prison. But they weren't out of danger yet. "Copy everything," Ethan said. "We don't have much time." Javier pulled out his phone and began taking pictures of the documents, while the flash drive continued downloading the digital files. The seconds ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last as Ethan listened for any sign of trouble. Suddenly, the distant sound of a door opening and closing made his blood run cold. "Someone's coming," Ethan warned. Javier yanked the flash drive from the computer and shoved it into his pocket. Red gathered the documents and stuffed them back into the folder, tucking it under his jacket. "We need an exit," Javier whispered, his eyes darting toward the door. Ethan's gaze shifted to the window behind the desk. It was large enough to climb through, and the fire escape outside would lead them down to the maintenance yard. "Out the window," Ethan said, already moving to unlock it. He pushed it open, the cool night air rushing in as he climbed out onto the metal platform. Javier and Red followed, their movements quick and silent. As they descended the fire escape, Ethan could hear voices inside the office, guards discovering the break-in. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay focused. They reached the ground and ducked behind a stack of crates just as a flashlight beam swept across the yard. Ethan signaled for them to move, and they slipped through the shadows, sticking to the perimeter until they reached the entrance to the maintenance tunnels. The heavy steel door creaked as they pushed it open, and they disappeared inside, the door closing behind them with a dull thud. The tunnel was damp and dimly lit, but the familiar surroundings brought a small measure of relief. They made their way to the alcove where they had hidden before, their breaths heavy and labored. Javier collapsed against the wall, wiping sweat from his brow. That was too close. But we did it, Red said, holding up the folder. We've got everything we need to take them down. Ethan nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. They had the evidence, but they still needed to get it out of the prison. The flash drive and the photos were useless if they stayed hidden underground. Marcus can help, Ethan said. He's got contacts on the outside who can leak this to the press. Once it's out in the open, neither Briggs nor Blake will be able to cover it up. Red frowned. And you think Briggs is just going to sit back and let us expose him? No, Ethan admitted. But once this goes public, he won't have any allies left. He'll be fighting to save himself. Javier exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. So, what's the next step? Ethan stared into the darkness, his jaw tightening. We get the evidence to Marcus, and then we prepare for Blake's final move. He's not going to go down quietly. The weight of their mission settled over them, but for the first time there was a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were winning. And when the storm finally broke, Ethan intended to be the last man standing. The prison hummed with restless energy. Word of the fire had spread, whispers of sabotage weaving through the yard like smoke that refused to dissipate. Guards patrolled in pairs, their radios crackling with updates, their eyes sharp and searching. Ethan moved through the crowd like a shadow, blending in as he made his way toward the laundry room where Marcus waited. Every step felt heavy, the folder tucked under his arm a reminder of how close they were to bringing this nightmare to an end. But close wasn't close enough. Until the evidence was in the hands of Marcus's contact outside the prison, Blake still had the upper hand. He slipped through the back entrance of the laundry room. The smell of detergent and damp clothes hanging in the air. Marcus stood by one of the industrial washers, his arms crossed, his face tense. You made it, Marcus said, relief softening his features for a moment before his gaze shifted to the folder. Is that it? Ethan handed it over. Everything we need to expose Briggs and Blake. Financial records, shipping manifests, correspondence. There's no way they can bury this. Marcus opened the folder, flipping through the documents quickly before nodding. I'll get this to my contact tonight. Once it's out, the media will tear them apart. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the weight of the past few weeks still pressed down on him. We can't let our guard down. Blake's going to retaliate as soon as he realizes we have him cornered. Marcus tucked the folder into a duffel bag and slung it over his shoulder. I'll move fast. If everything goes according to plan, this will be on the news by morning. Be careful, Ethan warned. If they catch you, this whole thing falls apart. Marcus gave a faint smile. I'm not the one they're watching, you are. The door to the laundry room creaked open, and Ethan instinctively reached for the shiv hidden in his waistband. But when he turned, it wasn't a guard or one of Blake's men, it was Red. His face pale and his breathing labored. We've got a problem, Red said, closing the door behind him. Daniels is loose and he's headed straight for Blake. Ethan's pulse spiked. He had warned Daniels to stay out of their way, but he should have known better than to expect compliance. If Daniels reached Blake and told him everything they'd done, the warden's files wouldn't matter. Blake would come after them with everything he had. We can't let Daniels talk, Ethan said, his mind racing. Where is he? Heading toward the east wing, Red replied. We can catch him if we move now. Marcus adjusted the strap of the duffel bag. You go, I'll handle the drop. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Get it done, Marcus. We'll handle Daniels. As Marcus slipped out the back entrance, Ethan turned to Red. "Let's move." The east wing was quieter than usual, the dimly lit corridors creating an eerie stillness that made Ethan's skin prickle. He and Red moved quickly but carefully, their footsteps muffled against the worn linoleum floor. The hum of the overhead lights buzzed faintly, masking the sound of their breathing. As they turned a corner, Ethan spotted Daniels near the stairwell, his posture rigid, his head snapping toward every shadow. He was on edge, but that didn't slow him down. He was heading for Blake like a man on a mission. Ethan clenched his fists, the shiv pressing against his side as he moved closer. "Daniels!" he called, his voice echoing down the corridor. Daniels froze, his shoulders tensing before he turned around. His eyes narrowed when he saw Ethan and Red approaching. But he didn't run. Instead, he smirked, a cocky, defiant grin that made Ethan's blood boil. "Well, well," Daniels said, leaning casually against the wall. "Didn't think you had the guts to come after me again." Ethan stopped a few feet away, his gaze hard. "I warned you to stay out of our way," Daniels shrugged. "I don't take orders from you, Cole. Besides, why would I sit back and let you ruin everything? Blake's got deep pockets and I like getting paid." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think Blake's going to protect you after this? You're just another pawn to him, Daniels. As soon as you stop being useful, he'll get rid of you like he's done to everyone else." Daniels's smirk faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered. "Maybe, but if I deliver you to him, I'll be back in his good graces long enough to enjoy it." Red stepped forward, but Ethan held up a hand, stopping him. This wasn't just about stopping Daniels, it was about sending a message to Blake. "Last chance," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. "Walk away, disappear, and you might live long enough to see what happens when Blake falls." Daniels laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You really think you can take him down? You're a dead man walking, Cole. Blake's not just some corrupt officer, he's got connections outside these walls that you can't touch." "Maybe," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But you know what I've got that Blake doesn't?" Daniels raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Nothing to lose," Ethan whispered, and before Daniels could react, Ethan's fist connected with his jaw. The force of the blow sent Daniels stumbling backward, crashing into the wall. Red was on him in an instant, pinning him down while Ethan pulled the shiv from his waistband. The cold metal glinted under the flickering light, and Daniels' eyes widened with fear. "You don't have to do this," Daniels said, his voice trembling. "I won't tell him anything." Ethan knelt down, the shiv hovering inches from Daniels' throat. "You're right, you won't." The silence stretched for a heartbeat, tension crackling in the air like static electricity. But instead of driving the shiv forward, Ethan pressed it against Daniels' cheek, the tip drawing a thin line of blood. "This is your only warning," Ethan said, his voice ice cold. "If I see you anywhere near Blake again, I won't stop next time." Daniels nodded frantically, sweat dripping down his face. "I get it, I get it." Ethan stood, signaling for Red to release him. Daniels scrambled to his feet, clutching his cheek as he backed away. "You're making a mistake, Cole," he said, his voice shaky. "Blake's going to crush you." "Let him try," Ethan replied, watching as Daniels turned and bolted down the corridor. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Red let out a low whistle. "Thought you were actually going to finish him." Ethan exhaled slowly, the adrenaline still pulsing through his veins. "Killing him would have been too easy. Blake needs to know that we're coming for him, and that we're not afraid to leave survivors to spread the message." Red chuckled, clapping Ethan on the back. "You've got a mean streak, Cole. I like it." Ethan's gaze darkened. This isn't about being mean, it's about winning. And with the Warden's files on their way to the outside world, Ethan knew they had one last battle to fight before the storm finally cleared. Blake wouldn't see it coming. The cold dawn broke over the prison, casting long shadows through the barred windows of Ethan's cell. He sat on the cot, staring at the thin beam of sunlight that crawled across the floor, a silent reminder that another day had begun. But this wasn't just another day. Today, the world outside would know the truth about Carter Blake and Warden Briggs. He had barely slept, his mind running through every possible outcome. Marcus was supposed to deliver the evidence to his contact before dawn. If everything went smoothly, the news would break within hours, and Blake's stranglehold on the prison would finally start to loosen. But until then, all Ethan could do was wait, and waiting was its own form of torture. The metallic clang of the cell doors opening jolted him out of his thoughts. A guard barked the usual morning orders and the prisoners shuffled out into the corridors for breakfast. Ethan moved with the crowd, keeping his head down but his senses sharp. He had no doubt that Blake was already preparing a counterstrike. As he entered the dining hall, the familiar mix of stale food and tension hit him like a wall. He grabbed a tray of watery eggs and dry toast and scanned the room. Spotting Javier and Red sitting at their usual table in the corner, he made his way over, sliding onto the bench across from them. "Any word from Marcus?" Red asked, shoving a forkful of eggs into his mouth. "Not yet," Ethan replied, keeping his voice low. "But if the drop went as planned, we should see something soon." Javier glanced around the room, his fingers drumming anxiously against the table. "Blake's been quiet this morning. Too quiet, it's like the calm before the storm." "He knows we're up to something," Ethan said. "He's just waiting for the right moment to strike." As if on cue, the room fell silent as a guard entered, followed by none other than Warden Briggs himself. The warden's crisp uniform was perfectly pressed, and his face was a mask of controlled authority. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of unease. He scanned the room, his gaze briefly landing on Ethan before moving on. "Something's wrong," Red muttered, leaning closer. Ethan nodded, his pulse quickening. Briggs never showed up in the dining hall unless there was an emergency. And judging by the tension in the air, something was brewing. Suddenly, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Another guard burst in, holding a walkie-talkie to his mouth, his face pale and panicked. "Sir, we've got a situation." "Turn on the TV." Briggs's eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue. He followed the guard toward the small television mounted on the wall, and within seconds, the screen flickered to life. The chatter in the dining hall died down as prisoners and guards alike turned their attention to the news broadcast. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the headline flashed across the screen. "Prison corruption exposed. Warden Leonard Briggs and military official Carter Blake under investigation." The anchor's voice filled the room, calm but relentless, as she detailed the findings from the leaked documents: offshore bank accounts, smuggled weapons, drug trafficking, and a trail of bribes that led all the way back to the prison. The camera cut to an image of Briggs shaking hands with Blake, the photo taken during one of their secret meetings. Murmurs spread through the dining hall like wildfire. Prisoners exchanged wide-eyed glances, while the guards shifted uncomfortably. Briggs's face turned ashen, his mouth opening and closing as if he were trying to form a response but couldn't find the words. Ethan's heart pounded. The plan had worked. "Holy shit," Red whispered, his eyes glued to the screen. "We actually did it," Javier grinned, leaning back in his seat. And just like that, the house of cards starts to fall. But Ethan didn't allow himself to celebrate just yet. He knew this was only the beginning. Blake wouldn't go down without a fight, and Briggs, desperate to save himself, might lash out in ways they couldn't predict. The warden snapped out of his stupor, barking orders to the guards. "Shut this down! Get everyone back to their cells!" The guards moved quickly, herding the prisoners toward the exits. Ethan stood, keeping his movements calm and measured, even as adrenaline coursed through his veins. As he passed Briggs, the warden's eyes locked onto him, filled with a mix of fury and fear. Ethan held his gaze, unflinching. The message was clear. "I know what you did, and I'm not done yet." Back in his cell, Ethan paced like a caged animal, the thrill of victory mingling with the anxiety of what came next. Red and Javier had been separated during the lockdown, but he knew they were thinking the same thing. Blake would strike back and it would be brutal. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a key turning in the lock. The cell door creaked open, and a guard stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "Cole, you've got a visitor." Ethan's brow furrowed. He hadn't been expecting anyone. His heart raced as he followed the guard down the corridor, every step echoing in his ears. If this was a trap, he had to be ready. They stopped outside the visitation room, and the guard gestured for him to enter. The door closed behind him, and for a moment the room was eerily quiet. Then, from the far corner, a familiar voice cut through the silence. "You've made a mess, Cole." Ethan's hands curled into fists as Carter Blake stepped into the light. The man was as impeccably dressed as ever, but his calm demeanor couldn't hide the tension in his jaw or the flicker of anger in his eyes. "Surprised to see me?" Blake asked, circling the table. "Not really," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "I figured you'd come crawling out of the shadows once the walls started closing in." Blake chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You've always had a flair for the dramatic, but let me be clear, this isn't over. You've exposed Briggs, sure, but you haven't touched me. By the time this investigation gets anywhere, I'll be long gone and you'll still be rotting in here." Ethan leaned forward, locking eyes with Blake. "Don't be so sure. You've underestimated me once, and look where that got you." Blake's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "You think you've won because you embarrassed me on TV? I've got friends who can make your life hell." "I'm counting on it," Ethan said, standing. "Because the harder you push, the more desperate you'll get. And desperate men make mistakes." The guard knocked on the door, signaling that their time was up. Blake's eyes narrowed as Ethan turned to leave. "This isn't the end, Cole," Blake called after him. "You don't get to walk away from this." Ethan paused at the door, glancing over his shoulder. "Neither do you." As the door closed behind him, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. The cracks in Blake's armor were starting to show, and with Briggs out of the picture, it was only a matter of time before Blake fell too. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, Ethan could see the light breaking through. And he wasn't going to stop until Blake was buried beneath the rubble. The silence of the cell block was shattered by the rhythmic clang of metal doors slamming shut, followed by the heavy footsteps of guards making their nightly rounds. But for Ethan, the real storm wasn't outside. It was inside, waiting to strike. He sat on his cot, muscles tense, listening to the sounds of the prison like a predator tracking its prey. Blake wouldn't sit idle after today's public humiliation. He was too dangerous for that. Javier had warned him during their last meeting. Blake's not just going to hit back, he's going to hit where it hurts the most. And Ethan knew exactly what that meant. Emily. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. His daughter was the reason he had survived this long, the reason he had fought through the betrayal, the accusations, and the prison walls closing in around him. But now, she was the one in danger, and he had to move fast before Blake could reach her. A knock on the bars jolted him to his feet. Red stood outside, his expression grim. "We've got a problem." Javier just spotted Blake meeting with one of the guards near the kitchen entrance. "They're planning something, and it's happening tonight." Ethan's pulse quickened. Did he hear what they were saying? "Not much," Red replied, "but it's bad. Blake's pulling strings. And I'm guessing he's not just going after you. He's making sure no one survives to testify." Ethan didn't hesitate. "We need to find Javier, now." The kitchen was dark and quiet, the smell of stale food and bleach lingering in the air. The faint hum of the industrial refrigerator provided the only noise as Ethan and Red moved cautiously through the shadows. Every corner felt like a potential ambush, every flicker of light a possible threat. They found Javier near the storage room, crouched behind a stack of crates. He looked up as they approached, his face pale but determined. "They've got Daniels with them," Javier whispered. "Blake's using him to coordinate the hit. They're planning on taking us out one by one, starting with you." Ethan's mind raced. Daniels had been a problem before, but now he was a ticking time bomb. If he was working directly with Blake, they couldn't afford to leave him in play any longer. "Where are they now?" Ethan asked. "Near the guard station by the north wing," Javier replied. "They're waiting for the shift change. Once the guards rotate, they'll have a clear path to our cells." Red cursed under his breath. "They're cutting off our escape routes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we don't wait for them to come to us. We hit them first." Javier raised an eyebrow. You want to go after Blake directly? Ethan nodded. If we take out Daniels and disrupt Blake's plan, we'll buy ourselves enough time to get the remaining evidence to the authorities. But we need to move now. Red cracked his knuckles. Let's end this. The north wing of the prison was eerily silent, the fluorescent lights casting a sickly glow over the worn linoleum floors. Ethan led the way, his footsteps muffled as he navigated the maze of corridors. Javier and Red followed close behind, their eyes darting to every shadow. They reached the guard station, a small room with a glass window that overlooked the corridor. Inside, Daniels was leaning against the wall, talking to one of the guards. His body language was relaxed, but his eyes betrayed his nervousness. Blake wasn't there, yet. We take Daniels down before Blake arrives, Ethan whispered. Quick and quiet. Javier nodded, pulling a length of wire from his pocket. I can handle the guard. Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the seconds tick by. He gave a brief nod, and Javier moved silently toward the door. With practiced precision, he looped the wire around the guard's neck, pulling him back before he could make a sound. The guard's body slumped to the floor, unconscious. Daniels turned, his eyes widening as Ethan and Red entered the room. Wait. Ethan didn't wait. He lunged forward, grabbing Daniels by the collar and slamming him against the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of him, and he gasped for breath as Ethan pressed his forearm against his throat. You should have stayed out of this, Ethan growled, his voice low and dangerous. Daniels struggled, but Ethan tightened his grip. Blake sent you to do his dirty work, didn't he? What's the plan, Daniels? Go to hell, Daniels spat, but his defiance wavered when Ethan pressed harder. Red stepped forward, his voice cold. You've got two choices, Daniels. Tell us what we want to know. Or we leave you here for Blake to find when this all blows up. Daniels' eyes darted between them, panic setting in. Blake's not just planning to kill you. He's going after your daughter. He's got contacts outside the prison, and he's already made the call. The room seemed to tilt for a moment as the words sank in. Ethan's grip faltered, but only for a second. Then the fury returned, hotter and more focused than ever. Who's he working with? Ethan demanded. Names, locations, everything. Daniels' breath hitched. I don't know the names, I swear. All I know is that they're watching her house. Once they get the signal, it's over. Ethan's mind raced. He had prepared for many scenarios, but this was the one he had feared most. Emily was miles away, vulnerable, and Blake's reach was longer than he had anticipated. We're done here, Ethan said, releasing Daniels and stepping back. Tie him up, he's not warning anyone. Javier and Red secured Daniels to a chair with strips of cloth, gagging him to ensure he couldn't call for help. Ethan stood by the door, his mind spinning as he tried to piece together a plan. We need to get to a phone, he said, his voice tight. I have a contact who can protect Emily, but we don't have much time. Red frowned. How are we going to pull that off? The guards are everywhere, and Blake's got them in his pocket. Javier smirked. Leave that to me. There's a maintenance phone in the boiler room. If we can reach it, you can make the call. Ethan nodded. Let's go. They moved quickly, slipping through the shadows as the prison buzzed with activity. Guards shouted orders, prisoners whispered of impending lockdowns, and the tension in the air crackled like static electricity. When they reached the boiler room, Javier pried open the door and led them inside. The heat was oppressive, the hiss of steam pipes creating an eerie backdrop as they navigated the narrow space. The maintenance phone hung on the wall near a row of control panels, its receiver covered in dust. Ethan grabbed the phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed the number. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Cole? It's me, Ethan said, his voice raw. Blake's sending someone to Emily's house. You need to get there now. I'm on it, the voice replied without hesitation. We'll keep her safe. The line went dead, and Ethan exhaled, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. For now, Emily was safe. But this wasn't over. Blake had made it personal, and Ethan wasn't going to let him walk away from this. He turned to Javier and Red, his gaze hard. We take down Blake tonight. Red grinned. Now you're talking. The final confrontation was coming, and Ethan was ready. The storm outside raged on, rain slapping against the windows of the prison as if nature itself knew a battle was about to be fought. Thunder rumbled in the distance, shaking the walls like an ominous drum roll. Inside, the atmosphere was just as charged, prisoners whispering to each other, guards pacing more nervously than usual. But Ethan didn't have time to worry about the chaos around him. His focus was locked on one thing: Carter Blake. Blake's men had been tightening their grip over the past few hours, blocking exits, controlling guard rotations, and isolating Ethan, Javier, and Red from potential allies. Blake thought he had cornered them. What he didn't realize was that they had been waiting for this moment. Ethan crouched behind a supply shelf in the maintenance tunnel. Red and Javier beside him. Their breaths were steady but controlled, adrenaline keeping them sharp despite the fatigue settling into their bones. The glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows, making the narrow tunnel feel like the setting for a final showdown. "This is it," Javier whispered, checking the makeshift weapon he had crafted from a sharpened piece of pipe. "You sure about this plan?" Ethan's eyes didn't waver. "Blake expects us to run. We're doing the opposite." Red smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. "About time we turned the tables." Ethan pulled out the map of the prison's lower levels, tracing their route with his finger. "Blake's meeting with his inner circle in the warden's office. He'll have backup, but not enough to stop us if we hit fast and hard." "And Daniels?" Javier asked. "Think he'll stay tied up?" "If he knows what's good for him," Ethan replied, tucking the map away. "But we're not counting on luck. Once we hit the warden's office, we neutralize Blake and get him to confess." "Confess?" Red raised an eyebrow. "You think he'll give up that easy?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "He won't. But I have ways of convincing him." The air between them grew heavier, but no one objected. They knew what was at stake. Blake had already shown he was willing to kill to protect his empire, and if they didn't act now, he wouldn't just take them down. He'd go after their families, their futures, and anyone who stood in his way. "Let's go," Ethan said, standing. The corridor leading to the warden's office was eerily quiet, the flickering lights casting shadows that danced along the walls. Water dripped from a pipe overhead, creating a steady rhythm that kept time with their footsteps. As they rounded the corner, Ethan raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. He peered around the edge of the wall, spotting 2 guards stationed outside the office door. Their postures were relaxed, but their weapons were in clear view. Blake had chosen men he could trust to protect him. 2 guards, Ethan whispered. "We take them down quietly." Red nodded, gripping a length of chain in his hands. "I'll handle the one on the left." Javier adjusted the grip on his pipe. "I've got the right." Ethan watched as they moved like shadows, silent and efficient. Red crept up behind the first guard, looping the chain around his neck and pulling him back. The guard struggled briefly before going limp, slumping to the floor. At the same time, Javier struck the second guard in the back of the head, knocking him unconscious before he could make a sound. Ethan stepped over the bodies, checking their pulses to ensure they were alive but out of commission. "Nice work." He tried the door. It was locked. No surprise. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card they had swiped from one of Blake's men earlier. The reader beeped, and the door clicked open. Ethan pushed it slowly, his heart pounding as he stepped inside. The warden's office was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn to block out the storm outside. The air was thick with the scent of cigar smoke, and the hum of a desktop computer provided the only background noise. Blake stood by the large oak desk, his back to them as he stared at the screen. The glow reflected off his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Blake said without turning around. He exhaled a cloud of smoke and stubbed out his cigar in the ashtray. "I figured you'd make one last desperate move." Ethan stepped forward, his footsteps slow and deliberate. "Desperate? No, calculated." Blake turned, his expression calm but his eyes sharp with malice. "You've caused me a lot of trouble, Cole, but it ends here. You're out of moves." Ethan smiled faintly. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing." Blake's gaze flicked to Javier and Red. who stood near the door, blocking his escape. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "You really think you've won? Even if you kill me, my people will clean this up. The evidence won't matter." Ethan shook his head. "The evidence is already outside the prison. By now, every news station in the country knows what you've done. The warden's finished and you're next." Blake's composure cracked, his fists clenching at his sides. "You think you're a hero, don't you? But you're just a criminal like the rest of them. No one's coming to save you." "I don't need saving," Ethan said, taking another step closer. "But you do." In a flash, Blake lunged for the drawer of the desk, pulling out a gun. Time seemed to slow as he aimed it directly at Ethan's chest. But before he could pull the trigger, Red charged forward, tackling Blake to the ground. The gun skidded across the floor, landing near Javier's feet. Blake struggled beneath Red's weight, his face contorted with rage. "You're making a mistake!" Ethan knelt down, grabbing Blake by the collar and forcing him to look him in the eye. "The only mistake was underestimating me." Blake spat blood onto the floor, breathing heavily. "You think this is over?" Ethan leaned in, his voice cold and steady. "It is for you." He stood nodding to Javier, who grabbed the gun and tucked it into his waistband. Red hauled Blake to his feet, pinning his arms behind his back. "What now?" Red asked. Ethan stared at Blake for a moment, then pulled out his phone. "Now, we call the press." Blake's eyes widened. "You wouldn't—" "I would," Ethan said. "And I will. By the time they're done with you, there won't be a rock you can crawl under." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room as the storm reached its peak. Blake struggled, but it was useless. As the phone rang, Ethan felt a wave of determination wash over him. They had fought, bled, and risked everything for this moment. And now it was time to finish what they started. The storm outside might rage on, but inside, the tide had already turned. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windows of the warden's office, each droplet a reminder of the chaos raging outside, and the chaos Ethan had orchestrated inside. Blake sat slumped in the chair by the desk, his arms tied behind him with strips of fabric ripped from a guard's uniform. His breathing was heavy, labored, as if the weight of his crumbling empire pressed down on his chest. "You're done, Blake," Ethan said, standing over him. His voice was calm, but there was steel behind it. "Everything you built is coming apart." Blake lifted his head, a defiant glint still flickering in his eyes. "You think exposing me will change anything? Men like me survive because we know how to play the game. You don't." He smirked through the blood on his lips. "You're just a soldier, a disposable one." Ethan didn't flinch. "Maybe I was disposable to you, but I'm not the same man you framed." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I'm the man who's about to end you." Javier and Red stood by the door, keeping watch as Ethan paced the room. The phone in his hand buzzed, the vibration cutting through the tension like a knife. He checked the screen, Marcus's contact. He answered, putting the phone on speaker. "Tell me you have something good." Marcus's voice came through, laced with excitement. "Better than good. The media's running with the story. They've got everything. The offshore accounts, the smuggling routes. Even the payments Blake made to keep the guards quiet. It's a full-blown scandal." "And the warden?" Ethan asked. "Gone," Marcus replied. "He resigned this morning, but it won't save him. The state's launching an investigation and they're coming for everyone involved, including Blake." Ethan's gaze shifted to Blake, whose smirk had finally vanished. For the first time, there was real fear in his eyes. "I'll see you soon," Ethan said, ending the call. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Javier crossed his arms, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Looks like you're not as untouchable as you thought." "Huh, Blake?" Blake gritted his teeth. "You have no idea what you've done. You think the people coming after me won't come after you too? You've made enemies you can't even see." Ethan chuckled softly. "Let them come. I've faced worse." Blake thrashed against the makeshift restraints, his face turning red with frustration. If you think the law is on your side, you're more naive than I thought. They'll bury this just like they've buried everything else. Ethan knelt down, locking eyes with him. Not this time. The world's watching, and you're their headline. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Javier drew the gun he had taken from Blake earlier, while Red shifted into a defensive stance. "Who is it?" Ethan asked. "It's Marcus," came the reply from the other side. "We need to move, now." Ethan nodded to Javier, who opened the door just enough to let Marcus slip inside. His clothes were damp from the rain and his expression was grim. "The guards are on high alert," Marcus said. "Blake's people know something's up. If we don't get out of here soon, they'll lock the place down and we'll be trapped." Ethan turned back to Blake, his mind racing. They couldn't leave him tied up here. Blake would find a way to wriggle out of it, and the risk was too great. But taking him along wasn't an option either. "We need to delay them," Ethan said. "Javier, grab the laptop and any files you can find. We'll need everything to finish this outside." As Javier searched the room, Ethan leaned down one last time, inches from Blake's face. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit here and watch everything you built fall apart. When the investigators come knocking, you'll realize what it feels like to be trapped." Blake sneered. "You think this is justice?" "No," Ethan said, standing. "This is payback." Javier returned with the laptop and a stack of files. "Got it." Ethan gestured to Marcus. "Lead the way." They exited the office quickly, leaving Blake tied to the chair, the storm outside drowning out his muffled curses. The corridors were dimly lit and the air felt heavy, charged with tension as they navigated the maze of hallways. "Where's our exit?" Ethan asked. "Boiler room," Marcus replied. "There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the south gate." "It's unguarded, at least for now." Red chuckled. "Let's hope it stays that way." They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing against the cold tile floor. Every turn felt like a gamble, every shadow a potential threat. The guards weren't far behind. Ethan could feel it in the way the air seemed to pulse with urgency. As they reached the boiler room, Marcus opened the heavy steel door and ushered them inside. The heat was oppressive, steam hissing from the pipes like the breath of a sleeping beast. "This way," Marcus said, leading them to the far end of the room where a metal grate covered the entrance to the maintenance tunnel. He pried it open, and one by one they slipped through. The tunnel was dark and narrow, the air damp and stale. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating small puddles along the floor. Ethan's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay focused. They were almost there. "We're close," Marcus said, his voice echoing off the walls. Suddenly, the sound of distant footsteps made them all freeze. The tunnel amplified the noise, making it impossible to tell how far away the guards were. "Keep moving," Ethan urged. "We don't stop until we're out." They picked up the pace, the faint glow of the exit finally coming into view. The sound of the footsteps grew louder, closer, but Ethan didn't look back. His mind was locked on the light ahead, on the promise of freedom. As they reached the end of the tunnel, Marcus shoved open the final grate, and the cool night air rushed in, filling Ethan's lungs like a breath of salvation. They climbed out one by one, emerging into the rain-soaked night just beyond the south gate. Marcus pulled the grate shut behind them and locked it. "That should buy us some time." Ethan exhaled, the adrenaline still coursing through him. But as he looked around, a sense of relief washed over him. They had made it. The storm raged on, but for the first time, Ethan felt like he was standing in the eye of it. Calm, steady, and ready for whatever came next. He turned to Javier, Red, and Marcus, their faces reflecting the same mix of exhaustion and determination. "This isn't over," Ethan said, "but we've got what we need to finish it." Red grinned, rain dripping down his face. "Blake's going to wish he never met you." Ethan nodded, the fire in his chest burning brighter than ever. "Let's make sure of it." As they disappeared into the night, leaving the prison and Blake's empire behind, Ethan knew one thing for certain. This was the beginning of the end. The rain had stopped by the time Ethan, Javier, Red, and Marcus reached the safe house, a rundown, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The walls were cracked, the windows boarded up, and the faint smell of mildew hung in the air. But for now, it was their sanctuary. The faint hum of the city buzzed in the distance, but inside these walls, the only sound was the soft drip of water leaking from the roof. Ethan leaned against the wall, catching his breath as the adrenaline began to fade. His body ached, his muscles screaming from the long night. But his mind was still sharp. They had escaped Blake's trap, secured the evidence, and exposed the corruption. But there was one last move to make. "Tell me we've got everything," Ethan said, turning to Javier, who was seated at the makeshift table, the laptop in front of him. "We do," Javier replied, typing rapidly. "The files from the warden's office, the financial records, and even the recordings we made of Blake's threats. I'm sending everything to the media outlets and law enforcement as we speak." He glanced up, a grin spreading across his face. This time, they won't be able to ignore it. Marcus sat by the window, peeking through a gap in the boards. "Good, because Blake's people won't stop looking for us. We've got a narrow window before they regroup." Ethan nodded, stepping toward the table. "Then we hit hard and fast. The goal is to make sure Blake doesn't have time to disappear." Red chuckled, cracking his knuckles. "I wouldn't mind making him disappear permanently." Javier shook his head, his grin fading. "The world needs to see him fall, publicly, no shortcuts." Ethan agreed. Killing Blake would have been satisfying, but it wasn't enough. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. If they didn't destroy Blake's influence publicly, another man like him would take his place. The laptop dinged, signaling that the files had been uploaded successfully. Javier exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "It's done. The media will have it within the hour. Now we wait for the fallout." Ethan placed a hand on Javier's shoulder. "You did good." "Jav," Javier smirked. "Don't get soft on me, Cole." Suddenly Marcus tensed, his hand gripping the edge of the window. "We've got company." Ethan's head snapped toward him. "How many?" "2 cars, blacked out windows," Marcus replied. "They parked across the street." "Blake's men," Red muttered. "They found us faster than I thought." Ethan's mind raced. They couldn't afford to get cornered now. The evidence was already out, but if Blake caught them before the media storm hit, they wouldn't live to see the aftermath. "Time to move," Ethan said. "Javier, grab the laptop. Marcus, you know the back route?" Marcus nodded. "There's an alley that leads to the next block. We can slip out before they realize we're gone." "Let's go," Ethan said, leading the way toward the back door. The alley was dark and narrow, the walls on either side covered in graffiti. Their footsteps echoed softly as they moved quickly, keeping close to the shadows. The air was cool and damp, the smell of wet concrete lingering. Ethan's senses were on high alert, his eyes scanning every corner for signs of danger. Blake's men wouldn't give up easily, and he knew they were just as desperate as he was. As they reached the end of the alley, Marcus held up a hand, signaling them to stop. He peeked around the corner, then nodded. "Clear, for now." They emerged onto the next street, blending into the early morning crowd. The city was starting to wake up, street vendors setting up their stalls, delivery trucks rumbling past, and commuters rushing to catch buses. It was the perfect cover, but Ethan knew they couldn't relax. Not yet. "We'll split up," he said. "Meet at the train station in an hour. Stay out of sight." Javier frowned. "You sure you'll be okay on your own?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I've made it this far." Red clapped him on the shoulder. "We'll see you at the station." "Cole." As they dispersed into the crowd, Ethan ducked into a side street, keeping his head down. The adrenaline that had fueled him all night was wearing off, replaced by a deep exhaustion. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. His phone buzzed, and he pulled it from his pocket. The screen displayed an unknown number. But he answered it anyway. "Ethan Cole," a familiar voice said, cold and smug. "Blake." Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. "Calling to surrender?" Blake chuckled. "Not quite. I figured you'd want to hear this before it's over. You think you've won, but you've just made yourself a bigger target. You don't understand how deep this goes. Even if I fall, there are others waiting to take my place. Maybe, Ethan said, his voice steady. But you won't be around to see it. Blake's laughter faded, replaced by a low, menacing tone. You're a dead man, Cole. You've burned every bridge, made enemies you don't even know exist. You won't make it out of this alive. Ethan paused, letting the weight of Blake's words sink in. Then he smiled. I don't need to. I've already won. He ended the call, shoving the phone back into his pocket. The morning sun was beginning to break through the clouds, casting a soft golden light over the city. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel. Hope. The train station wasn't far, and as he made his way through the bustling streets, he knew this chapter of his life was finally closing. Blake would be dragged through the mud, his empire dismantled piece by piece. And even if Ethan had to disappear to ensure his safety, he would do so knowing that Emily would grow up in a world where her father wasn't a disgraced man. He arrived at the train station just as the first whistle blew. Javier, Red, and Marcus were waiting by one of the platforms, their faces reflecting the same mixture of exhaustion and triumph. We did it, Javier said, grinning. Ethan nodded. We did. As the train pulled into the station, Ethan glanced